Mom fed me expired food while my golden brother ate like a king. Now she wants $9,000 month for a retirement home. My mother fed me and my sister outdated food for 17 years while my golden kid brother ate fresh. She wants us to pay for her retirement home. My mother provided me and my sister expired food my whole life while my bigger brother Max got fresh food. I started at 7 and my sister Lily was 5. Mom's favorite was 2-year-old Max. He played football. Looked like dad before dad left. And got straight A's without trying. Saturdays were mom's grocery day. Bring home bags of fresh meat, veggies, bread, and milk for the main kitchen. She then took out a bag for Lily and myself. Moldy bread, dents in cans, and milk 1 day old. The yogurt was expired. She put our food in the basement fridge and told us. The upper kitchen fed Max. Food came from the basement. She'd yell at us for taking Max's meals if we took anything from upstairs. Expiring lunch meat gave me stomach illness at 9. I gave up for 4 days. Mom felt I was overdramatic. Lily was sick from poor milk at 8. Mom stated she probably got sick during school. Mom explained that we were finicky eaters who only preferred aged cheese and fermented items when teachers wondered why our lunches smelled bad. Max brought friends home and Mom cooked steak dinners while Lily and I ate outdated soup in the basement. She told everyone we required special food for sensitive stomachs. But Mom didn't expect this. Frequently getting sick boosted my immune system. I never missed school until high school. Perfect attendance earned me scholarships. To make outdated products taste good, I learned to cook everything from scratch, obsessed with food safety, nutrition, and preservation. Full ride culinary school entry. Lily became a pediatric nutrition nurse. She wanted no child to experience what we experienced. Max peaked in high school, failed college, returned home at 24, and never left. He's 40 and lives with his mother, working part-time at a hardware shop. I was chief chef at a 5-star restaurant by 30. I opened my own at 35. Try location times review. A full pediatric nutrition program is managed by Lily at the hospital. Mom was cut off when we turned 18. I haven't visited that house in 17 years. Mom never phoned or apologized. Last week, she visited my restaurant. No food, no congratulations. She needs cash. Max cannot support her longer. The house needs work. Her social security is inadequate. She wants me and Lily to buy a retirement house. A good one. She chose it in advance. $1 Math BBS. 9. Mathroom. 000. Mathroom. Mo. Dollar. She thinks Lily and I can divide it. Since we're successful. I reared you. She says. I housed you. You were fed daily. You should now look after me. I laughed in my restaurant. Fed us? She fed us trash and treated Max royally. John the sous chef looked worried. I dismissed him. Mom, I needed to check something in the kitchen. Instead, I called Lily, tell her to meet me at Mom's place tomorrow with her spouse. Then I called my lawyer friend David. Asked him to compose something special. Lily. Adam. David. And I visited Mom the next day. Max answered the door in his bathrobe at 2 p.m. The house smelled mildewy. Mom was discussing retirement home payment plans in the living room. David prepared the document I gave her. What? She asked. An invoice, I said. Lily's food poisoning, eating disorder treatment, and malnutrition-related dental work total $Math BBS 92, $0. Pay it, and we'll discuss retirement. She turned white, ranting about ungrateful kids and her sacrifices. Cut her off, Lily. Max ate like a king while you fed us old food for 17 years. You know what I found at 15? Your grocery bills. You intentionally bought expired food from a discount salvage store. Saving on daughter feeding so Max could buy name brand everything. Max appeared confused. Got expired food? Mom never told him. He believed we had particular nutritional needs for years. I showed him photographs from my phone. Remember your 18th birthday party with friends? Steak dinner upstairs. I and Lily ate expired canned ravioli in the basement. You heard from Mom about our sleepover. We spent the entire time downstairs. Max's face changed from uncertainty to terror. He regarded Mom. You fed them expired food? Mom's face went white, red, and white. Almost tripping, Max jerked back when she went for his arm. He stared at her like a stranger. which I'd never seen before. First, she opened her mouth but said nothing. Then the words tumbled together rapidly and frantically. She was just trying to be practical, she said. Making tough decisions as a single mother with 3 kids and no help. The food was perfectly safe, she said. Just past some random date printed on a label that didn't mean anything. We were always so picky, turning our noses up at everything, so why waste good money on food we'd complain about? Max watched her with his mouth slightly open and his eyes widening. I'd never heard my sister sound so cold and done with everything. She pulled out her phone and started swiping through photos, holding the screen up to Max's face. Moldy bread with green and white fuzz on the crust. Bloated cans. Max gazed at each photo, his face turning paler with each swipe. Mom started talking harder, saying certain photos were phony, exaggerated, or out of context. Lily kept swiping, showing him more evidence of what we ate for 17 years. Max turned and ran for the bathroom, throwing up, and echoing through the quiet house. Mom yelled at us that we were dramatic, manipulating him, and turning her son against her with lies and made-up stories. David moved beside me, and I could feel his lawyer instincts kick in, probably cataloging everything Mom said for future reference. I spoke up, my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. We have documentation of everything, I told Mom. Medical records from all the food poisonings she dismissed as dramatic. Hospital visits for Lily's stomach issues. Dental records showing malnutrition damage. David added that teachers noticed our lunches and remembered Mom's explanations about our supposed special dietary needs. Mom's face twisted ugly, her careful mask sliding away. Max returned from the bathroom looking like he might pass out. His skin was gray and he was breathing hard. He went straight to Mom and asked her if it was true. Did she buy our food from a salvage store on purpose? Mom didn't answer. She stood there with her mouth pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting between Max and the door like she was planning an escape. Adam spoke for the first time since we arrived. As a pediatrician, he said calmly, professionally, that he'd seen child neglect before. This was deliberate abuse because withholding adequate nutrition from one child while providing it for another showed favoritism and intentional harm. He was an outsider, she said, so he had no right to judge her parenting choices. He didn't know what it was like to raise 3 kids alone with little money. Adam didn't respond, just stood there with his hand on Lily's shoulder. Lily stood up and announced we were leaving. Mom's face went from angry to panicked as she talked about being homeless, having nowhere to go, and how we couldn't abandon her. Max asked how much money she saved in a quiet voice that cut through Mom's panic. Mom didn't answer the question. Her mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. As we approached the door, she screamed. Ungrateful daughters, she yelled after everything she sacrificed for us. David opened the door and we left one by one. Max didn't follow us. Through the window, I could see him still sitting on that couch, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Mom's voice followed us to our cars, getting more desperate with every step. After getting in our cars, I watched Lily collapse against Adam in the passenger seat. Her whole body shook with sobs that seemed to come from deep inside her chest. Adam wrapped both arms around her and held on while she cried into his shoulder. I stood by my car door, watching them through their windshield, and felt nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out without thinking. John had texted asking if I was okay and if he should cook dinner without me. Seeing his name on my screen brought everything back to reality. I texted back that I needed an hour and would be there soon. David walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. He said he'd send Mom an official cease and desist letter, making it clear that any further contact would result in a restraining order. He then suggested we report the childhood abuse to Adult Protective Services. Not for prosecution since too much time had passed, but to create an official. I nodded and got in my car before he could see my face doing whatever it was doing. Lily was still crying when I drove past their car. I tried to ignore Mom's face and Max sitting on that couch for 2 days. On Tuesday, John returned to my office, looking uncomfortable before dinner service. Max, who was at the front, asked to talk to me. I told John to handle the kitchen and went out to find Max standing by the host stand looking like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were red and his clothes looked worn, and something in his face made me take him back to my office. He was going through Mom's financial records and found receipts from the salvage store where she bought our food from 20 years ago. He opened the folder and spread them out so I could see them. Rows and rows of expired meat, dented cans, and outdated dairy products. She saved over $, math BBS, 32, $0 by feeding us garbage. He cross-referenced them with other receipts and found where the money went as sports equipment, college attempts, and car. Max started crying in my office. He cried so hard that his shoulders shook, saying he never knew, and if he had known, he would have done something. I watched him fall apart and wasn't sure I believed him. He liked being Mom's favorite because he got fresh food, new things, and all her attention. However, his horror seemed real, like he was seeing his childhood from a different perspective and realizing he was standing on top of our suffering the whole time. I realized he was another victim of Mom's manipulation, using him as a weapon against us without his knowledge. I asked Max what he wanted from me. He looked up from his hands and said he didn't want anything except to understand why Mom did this to us, so I told him the truth. Mom hated having daughters. She saw Max as the continuation of Dad and Lily and me as burdens after Dad left. She had 2 kids she never wanted, and every time she looked at us, she saw the life she could have had with one. Max's face went even paler. He asked if there was a way to make this right, and I told him I didn't know. The childhood was gone, and no amount of apologies or money could restore those years of hunger, sickness, and fear in that basement, or the food poisoning, stomach problems, or shame of bringing expired food to school. Max nodded like he expected that answer, but it hurt to hear it. He was moving out of Mom's house because he'd already started looking for apartments, and had applications in at 3 places. His part-time job barely covered the utilities, and now he knew where his childhood was spent. I sat in my office for a while staring at those receipts on my desk after Max left. I called Lily and told her about the conversation. After a long silence, she spoke in a hard voice, reminding me that Max had 40 years to notice something was wrong and chose not to. He ate his fresh meals upstairs while we got sick in the basement and never asked why. She wasn't ready to forgive him just because he opened his eyes. The next week, Mom started calling my restaurant constantly. John brought me a stack of message slips with increasingly desperate voicemails from her. Some begged me to reconsider and help her with a retirement home. Some threatened to tell everyone how terrible daughters we were for abandoning our mother, while others rambled about how she'd sacrificed everything for us and this was how we repaid her. John started screening my calls without my permission. If it was Mom, he'd answer and tell her I wasn't available and hang up. On a Thursday afternoon, David filed the report with Adult Protective Services. The line cooks had started giving me sympathetic looks, and the servers whispered in corners when they thought I couldn't hear them. Everyone knew something was wrong with the boss and her family. My phone called the following Tuesday during prep work, and the caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. I almost sent it to voicemail, but I answered, and the man on the other end introduced himself as Randolph Cross from Adult Protective Services. He told me that David had filed a report about Mom's past treatment of Em and Lily, and while they couldn't prosecute child abuse from decades ago, they wanted to talk to me about Mom's current situation and Max's while he was living there. He agreed to meet me at my restaurant after the lunch rush the next day. And he arrived at 3 with a worn leather briefcase and a suit that had seen better days but was clean and pressed. We sat in my office and I spread out everything I'd gathered on my desk. The medical records from all those food poisonings, each one noting my symptoms, and Mom's explanations that the doctors had documented with increasing concern. The salvage store receipts Max had found showing years of purchases of expired and damaged food. Randolph slowly reviewed each document, remaining professionally neutral, but I saw disgust in his eyes. He made notes in a small notebook, asking me about dates and details, whether Mom had any caregivers or support system. I told him about Max moving out, Mom's refusal to accept subsidized housing, and her insistence that Lily and I owed her an expensive retirement home. After going through everything, Randolph closed his notebook and looked at me. He said Max had already contacted them, providing information about Mom's mental state and financial situation. Mom had been getting worse since our confrontation, alternating between rage and self-pity. Max had documented all of Mom's calls and messages, kept records of them, and turned them over to Adult Protective Services because he was worried about her mental state. Randolph told me they would do a home visit to assess Mom's living conditions and mental health, but their main concern was making sure she had access to appropriate services. 3 days later, my phone rang while I was at home reviewing supplier invoices. He thanked me for taking the situation seriously and shook my hand before leaving, promising to contact me after they finished their assessment. Max's name appeared on the screen, and I hesitated before answering. When I did, his voice sounded lighter, like a weight had been lifted. He told me he'd found a tiny studio on the 3rd floor of an old building downtown with cheap rent because it was small and in a bad neighborhood, even though it was smaller than his bedroom at Mom's house. He could walk to work, and the landlord let him move in with just the first month's rent because Max had worked at the same hardware store for 10 years and had good references. He'd been there a week and was still getting used to buying his own groceries and cooking his own meals. I didn't argue with her because I understood where she was coming from, even though part of me thought Max deserved a chance to make things right. We sat there eating salads and talked about therapy. Lily said we both needed it, not together, but individually, to process what we were finally allowing ourselves to feel about our childhood. She'd found a therapist named Gregory Poditz, who worked with adult survivors of childhood abuse near the hospital and had evening appointments. She made an appointment for herself next week, and suggested I do the same. I pulled out my phone right then to call his office and schedule my first session. The receptionist was kind and didn't ask questions when I said I needed to talk about childhood trauma. She gave me an appointment for Thursday evening at 7 after my restaurant's dinner prep was done but before service started. 4 days later, Max texted me to meet with Lily and me. His therapist thought it would help him to hear directly from us how the abuse affected us to understand Mom's full scope. I called Lily immediately, and she was resistant at first, saying she didn't owe Max anything and wasn't interested in helping him feel better about his guilt. But I convinced her to give him one chance to listen, one meeting where he could hear our truth without defending himself or making excuse. She agreed if we met somewhere public and neutral and could leave any time without explanation. I texted Max back and suggested a downtown coffee shop that was always full of people working on laptops and having quiet conversations. We set it for Saturday afternoon at 2. Max was sitting at a corner table with 3 coffees ordered and waiting when Lily and I arrived. He looked terrible, like he'd aged 6 years in the 2 weeks since I'd last seen him. His face was drawn and pale, and his eyes were red like he'd been crying or not sleeping enough. He stood up when he saw us, but didn't hug or shake hands. Max didn't make excuses or try to explain anything. He just looked at us and asked us to tell him what it was like growing up in that house to help him understand what he'd missed all those years. Lily sat furthest from him, her body language closed off and defensive. I sat between them and wrapped my hands around the coffee cup he'd bought me, letting the warmth ground me. Lily spoke first, her voice steady but her hands shaking around her coffee cup. She described the constant stomach aches that became so normal she stopped talking about them and the school embarrassment when other kids asked why her lunch smelled funny and she had to make up stories about liking aged cheese. Her eating disorder began in high school, when she couldn't trust any food, even when she had fresh meals. She obsessively checked expiration dates, and threw away anything that seemed off. Mom stood in the doorway once and told me I was being dramatic, that I probably caught a stomach bug at school. I couldn't move without my stomach cramping up. After Lily brought me water in a plastic cup and sat with me when Mom wasn't looking, I started smelling everything before I ate it. I sniffed, examined, and held bread up to the light to check for mold spots. Mom missed when she cut it off. I'd smell milk even though the date said it was still good because I learned those dates meant nothing in our house. Meal anxiety never went away, and even now at my own restaurant with the freshest ingredients money can buy, I sometimes check expiration dates 3 times. I wake up some nights tasting spoiled food that isn't there. Max sat still while I talked, tears running down his face and dripping off his chin onto his shirt. My therapist says it's a trauma response by my brain to protect that scared kid who never knew if her next meal would make her sick. After Lily and I stopped talking, he took a shaky breath, and his voice was broken and raw. He said he was so sorry, that he had no idea, and that if he'd known, he would have done something. His words sounded genuine, but I wasn't sure I believed them. He said he was going to confront Mom and demand she admit what she did to he. He needed to hear it from her own mouth, not from excuses and justifications. Lily's response was immediate and sharp. Mom would never admit wrongdoing, that she'd spent too many years justifying her actions to herself to suddenly develop a conscience. Mom had built a whole story in her head about being a struggling single mother who did her best with limited resources. She convinced herself that feeding us expired food was practical and smart, not abusive. Lily told Max he was setting himself up for disappointment if he expected a real apology or accountability, but Max shrugged and said he needed to try for closure. After 2 weeks, Max texted us that the confrontation with Mom had gone exactly as Lily predicted. Mom denied everything, saying we were exaggerating and misremembering our childhood. She blamed Dad for leaving, us for being expensive to raise, and the world for not giving her enough money to raise 3 kids alone. She said the expired food was fine, that expiration dates were just suggestions, and that we turned out healthy, so it wasn't that bad. Max said she got angry when he pushed back, accusing him of betraying her by believing our lies. She called him ungrateful after everything she'd sacrificed for him and yelled at him to leave her house if he was going to side with his sisters over his mother. But Max changed after that confrontation. He called me a few days later and his voice was clearer. He told me he finally saw Mom clearly for the first time and saw the selfishness and cruelty Lily and I grew up with every day. He understood why we couldn't have a relationship with her and why we cut her off the day we turned 18. Watching her deny, deflect, and blame others showed him how she'd manipulated him his whole life. He served her once, made her appear good, and gave her something to brag about, so when he questioned her or challenged her version of events, she turned on him like she usually did us. Mom's landlord phoned Max 3 weeks after our coffee shop discussion. Mom had listed him as her emergency contact on the rental application years ago. The landlord explained that the house needed major repairs that Mom couldn't afford, including 2 leaks in the roof, a broken furnace, and a dangerous electrical system. Mom had 30 days to make the repairs or move out. The landlord sounded frustrated but said he'd look into it. Max texted me right after the call, asking if he'd done the right thing. I told him Mom's housing situation wasn't his responsibility anymore. Randolph called me on Tuesday afternoon while I was preparing vegetables for dinner to say they'd finished investigating Mom's living situation and connected her with low-income senior housing resources. Mom qualified for a $math BBS $300 a month subsidized apartment based on her Social Security income. Randolph said he'd personally walked Mom through the application process and helped her understand the benefits. He was optimistic that she'd accept the help. Mom refused the subsidized housing immediately. She called Randolph the same day and told him she deserved better than a cramped apartment in a building full of old people and the $9,000 retirement home she'd chosen with the fancy dining room, activities coordinator, and landscaped grounds. She said her daughter was obligated to pay for it because we owed her after everything she'd done for us. Randolph called me exhausted and frustrated, saying they couldn't force her into housing she didn't want unless she became a danger to herself or others. After 7 weeks of therapy with Gregory, I began to understand Mom's refusal to take responsibility. He explained that Mom's denial wasn't about me or Lily, but about her inability to face her own motherhood. Admitting she deliberately fed her daughter expired food while giving her son fresh meals would require her to see herself as abusive and cruel. Accepting the truth would shatter her self-image as a struggling single mother who did her best under difficult circumstances, and force her to face decades of choices she couldn't change. Gregory said some people would rather die defending their false narrative than face the truth about themselves. Max started coming to my restaurant every Thursday night about 7 to order whatever John advised and talk about food and cooking. Lily and I couldn't change that, no matter how much proof we offered. John enjoyed the company and would explain how he prepared different dishes, what ingredients worked well together, and why certain cooking methods worked better. Max told me one night that he was learning to cook properly for the first time in his life. Mom had always made his meals for him. And he had a background. He had always relied on her for food, never learning basic skills most teenagers learn. Now he was watching cooking videos online and practicing simple recipes in his tiny studio apartment kitchen, slowly building the skills he should have learned 22 years ago. Emily messaged me on Instagram 4 weeks after Max started his weekly restaurant visits. She introduced herself as someone Max had been seeing for a few months, and asked if we could meet to discuss the family situation. Max had told her everything, she wrote, and she wanted to understand the dynamics before getting more serious with him. John raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. Emily was waiting at a corner table with 2 glasses of red wine when I arrived at a downtown wine bar on my next night off. She stood up to shake my hand and was tall, maybe 5'10", with short dark hair and direct brown eyes that looked at me without that fake sympathy some people give when they hear about abuse. She thanked me for coming and asked specific questions about our childhood and Max's role in it. I appreciated that she didn't play around or make small talk first. She listened as I explained the basement fridge, expired food, constant sickness, and Max eating fresh meals upstairs while we got garbage. Emily nodded and took notes on her phone, which seemed odd until she told me she was a social worker and documenting helped her process difficult information. She told me she'd been encouraging Max to keep his distance from Mom while trying to build relationships with Lily and me if we were open. She said Max talked about us constantly, about his guilt eating him alive, and about wanting to make things right even though he knew he couldn't change the past. Emily leaned forward and lowered her voice like she was sharing something private. Max had panic attacks, waking up at night thinking about how he benefited from our suffering. He'd been adding it up obsessively, she told me, trying to calculate how much of his life was built on our pain. Mom bought him sports equipment, college tuition, and a car with money she saved by feeding us expired food from the salvage store. I stirred my wine and thought about that before responding. I told Emily that Max was part of Mom's system. But he was also a kid who didn't know what was happening. Mom abused us by buying spoiled food and feeding it to her daughters while giving her son fresh meals. I called Lily the next day and met her for coffee near the hospital where she works. I told her about meeting Emily and what she said about Max's panic attacks and guilt. Lily stirred sugar into her coffee and stared out the window for a long time before speaking. She asked if I thought we were ready to have Max in our lives, not just him coming to my restaurant once a week, but as family. I didn't know if he was sincere about wanting to understand and change, but rebuilding trust after 32 years of him being Mom's favorite while we ate garbage wasn't going to happen in a few weeks. Lily agreed and said her therapist had told her that healing from this kind of childhood takes years, not months, and Max would have to prove himself through consistent actions, not just words and guilt. We decided to stay open to the possibility but keep our boundaries firm and our expectations low. Max called me 2 months later, stressed, to tell me Mom's house was going into foreclosure because she hadn't paid the mortgage. He'd warned her this would happen when she refused Randolph's subsidized apartment, but she didn't believe him. She apparently thought Lily and I would cave and give her money for the fancy retirement home she wanted. Max tried to convince Mom that we weren't going to change our minds and had been clear about our boundaries, but Mom insisted we were just being stubborn and would come around when we saw her lose everything. The bank had already started the foreclosure process, and Mom had maybe 62 days before she'd be forced out. A cash-buying investor bought the house at auction, giving Mom 32 days to leave instead of 62. Max helped her move to the subsidized senior apartment because he couldn't abandon her after everything, but he said he was keeping boundaries. The apartment was small but clean in a building with other seniors and close to a bus line. Mom complained the whole time they moved her stuff. Max said that her daughters had forced her into poverty and that she deserved better after raising us. Max didn't argue with her, but kept moving boxes and installing furniture until everything was done. Mom attempted one more manipulation. A week after moving, she sobbed and told Max she needed pricey therapy her insurance wouldn't pay. She needed Math BBS 12. $0 immediately, or she'd die, she said. He was her only hope after her unappreciative daughters left her. Max requested the doctor's diagnosis, treatment plan, and anything else to substantiate her claims. Mom was furious and told him to trust her without proof. Max insisted, but Mom had made it up and gave no explanation. She eventually admitted no illness. She lied to get money. Max's voice was shattered when he told me over the phone, like that final lie had destroyed his notion of Mom as a kind person who made errors. Max was changed by that falsehood more than earlier revelations. The next day, he called Mom to say he was going low contact and would check on her once a month to make sure she was fed and safe, but he needed time to heal after growing up in a manipulative and favoritistic atmosphere. Max stayed calm and ended the conversation as Mom shouted desertion and ingratitude. Afterward, he emailed me that it was the hardest thing he'd ever done, but the most essential, and that his therapist, Melene, had helped him understand that defending himself wasn't abandoning Mom. She was setting appropriate limits she should have honored years earlier. Lily and I had supper with Max and Emily at my restaurant 4 months after our disagreement at Mom's old house. I reserved a rear table to avoid interruptions from other customers and workers. All of us sitting there with menus we weren't reading, talking about weather and traffic was odd at first. Max tried to cook her dinner and unintentionally used salt instead of sugar in the dessert, Emily said. Something broke the tension. We laughed heartily, not courteous, but sincere, like you can't breathe. Max told another pasta burning story due to forgetting water. Lily said Adam tried to make her breakfast in bed and set off the smoke alarm. We laughed and talked for 2 hours at that table, feeling like we were developing something new that wasn't defined by our background or Mom's violence but by who we were becoming now. Max announced his news after dessert. He took general education classes at community college to get back into school, to get his degree. He stated he studied business management to develop a career rather than work part-time for life. Emily clasped his hand under the table, revealing a solid partnership. Someone who helped him improve rather than keep him trapped. Max stared at Lily and me and stated he couldn't fix the past or make up for his ignorance. While we suffered, he wanted us to know he was attempting to become a brother we might desire. Lily silently gripped his other hand across the table. The gesture convinced me to meet Gregory twice a week instead of once. He suggested EMDR for my 9-year-old food poisoning. Mom said I was dramatic when I vomited for 4 days. We sat in his office with the light bar, and I watched the moving dot with my eyes, remembering the bathroom floor, the taste of bile, and how my stomach squeezed so hard I thought it was tearing. Gregory asked me to score distress 0-10. Start at 9. We conducted eye motions and he inquired what happened. I pictured myself on that chilly tile floor, 7 years old, frightened I would die and nobody cared. Extra eye movements. The memory changed to me being successful and strong, contacting the girl to say she survived. After the session, Distress dropped to 3. I left Gregory's office feeling like someone had lifted a weight I'd forgotten I was carrying. John said I looked lighter the next day at dinner. My old things were being sorted, and he nodded like he understood without explanation. 2 weeks later, Lily contacted me with a joyful voice I hadn't heard since we were youngsters. Her hospital began screening youngsters for dietary issues and nutrition neglect. She led the design, leveraging everything we did to discover youngsters suffering like us. She spoke quickly about training nurses to notice indications, connecting families with resources, and how early detection may improve a child's life. I listened to her explain screening questions, intervention techniques, and follow-up in my office. My sister was using our horror to protect other kids. After she breathed, I told her I was proud. She paused, then added she was proud of us for not letting Mom destroy us. Max texted me a few days later to bring Emily to meet Lily and Adam. He said he wanted his loved ones to know each other. I called to gauge her opinion. After a long silence, she indicated she was willing to accept Max into her life slowly, but he needed to work hard. I emailed Max that Lily agreed, and we planned supper for the following Saturday at a restaurant midway between them. When I hung up, I was proud of my sister for taking that chance and not allowing our history to make her so hard that she couldn't see Max's sincere attempts to improve. I received the letter at my restaurant on Tuesday afternoon. John brought it to my office with a worried look, stating it was personal. Instantly recognized Mom's handwriting on the envelope. Opening it made my hands shake. 3 pages of cramped writing claiming she was dying from an unidentified illness, wanting to make peace before it was too late, and urging me to call her so we could talk. The letter was deceptive and guilt-ridden, mentioning forgiveness, family, and time constraints. I emailed David photos of each page. His call came within an hour. He made touch with Adult Protective Services, who checked on Mom occasionally. Randolph said, Mom's recent exam showed she was healthy. She was lonely and still attempting to get our attention and money. After dinner, I stared at a blank sheet of paper at my desk for a long time. Finally, I started writing. I told Mom that I'd constructed a decent life despite what she did to me and Lily. I told her I was successful and happy, that I had people who loved me and a career I was proud of. I told her she had no place in my future until she really admitted what she'd done and got significant professional help. I didn't sugarcoat anything or pretend the abuse was less than it was. I also didn't write with rage, simply with honesty. When I finished, it was 3 pages long. I read it over twice, sealed it in an envelope, and mailed it the next morning. David asked if I wanted him to evaluate it first. I told him no. This was something I needed to undertake on my own terms. Weeks passed with no response from Mom. I checked my mail at the restaurant every day, looked at my phone, expecting a call or text. Nothing came. One morning, I woke up and realized I was okay with her silence. I didn't need her apology anymore since I'd given myself permission to move forward without it. The letter wasn't really for her anyway. It was for me, a method of closing a door I'd left open for too long. Gregory noted during our next session that this was a big step in my healing, learning to quit hoping for validation from someone who would never supply it. 2 years went by faster than I thought. Max finished his community college program and invited Lily and me to his graduation ceremony. We sat in the bleachers with Emily and Adam, watching Max walk across the stage in his cap and gown to obtain his associate's degree. When they yelled his name, we all got up and cheered. Afterwards, Max introduced us to his classmates as his sisters. There was pride in his voice as he uttered it. Genuine gladness in having us there. One of his friends noted that Max talked about us all the time, about how we'd overcome rough childhoods to establish great careers. Max seemed ashamed but thrilled. On the trip home, I told Lily that maybe we were actually becoming a true family, the kind we should have had all along. The culinary magazine interview happened 4 months after Max's graduation. They wanted to feature my restaurant as part of a series on inventive cooks. The interviewer asked about my inspiration for becoming a chef, what inspired me to pursue this vocation. I told her a highly edited version of the truth, about learning to cook from necessity as a kid, about turning something difficult into something beautiful. I talked about food safety and nutrition, about how cooking became my method of taking control when so much of my childhood felt out of my grasp. The story came out 6 weeks later with a full layout, featuring images of my kitchen and several of my specialty recipes. The response was overwhelming. People came out through social media sharing their own stories of using cooking to recover from trauma, of finding purpose through food. The magazine editor informed me that was one of their most shared articles that year. Lily's nutrition program hit its 1-year mark at the same time my article came out. She contacted me to share the numbers. 48 youngsters were identified and supported in the first year. The initiative has connected families with resources, offered nutrition information, and in 2 cases reported suspected abuse to the relevant authorities. Those 2 examples led to youngsters being evacuated from risky conditions and put with relatives who could care for them properly. Lily's voice turned husky when she informed me about those 2 kids. She said every child she helped was like saving our younger selves, like going back in time and giving the little girl in the basement the protection she deserved. I realized exactly what she meant. We were both wanting to make sure no other kid had to live through what we experienced. Max contacted me on a random Wednesday evening, his voice anxious and enthusiastic at the same time. He'd proposed to Emily, and she said yes. He wanted to know if Lily and I would be willing to come to the wedding. I answered him. Of course we would, that we'd be honored to be there. Then he posed the harder question. Did we think he should invite Mom? I took a breath and informed him honestly that it was his choice to make, but Lily and I wouldn't attend if Mom was present. We'd spent too long developing healthy boundaries to put ourselves back in her presence, especially at an event that should be pleasant and drama-free. Max was quiet for a time, then said he understood and he'd think about what he wanted to do. When I informed Lily about the talk later, she complimented me for being direct with Max about our restrictions. Called. My son was thrilled with the Lego gift from his grandparents, but then he found something inside. 36 hours later, 112 showed up at my parents' door. For my son's elementary school graduation, my parents sent him a large Lego set. When he first saw all those vibrant pieces, he was ecstatic and his eyes lit up. Then he froze abruptly. My heart stopped as I leaned closer and asked, "Mom, what's this?" I let no one see me screaming inside. I immediately took action. 112 arrived at their door 36 hours later. My name is Alyssa. The day Ethan graduated from elementary school was meant to be a routine afternoon in Indianapolis. Our backyard isn't particularly fancy. Pizza is delivered from the place down the street, and there are some folding chairs. A few of his 5th grade pals were giggling while a Bluetooth speaker played music. Before he started middle school, I wanted to make it something he would remember. Just as everyone was applauding the presents, my parents' package arrived. As usual, a large box, glossy wrapping, and a flawlessly tied red bow. When Ethan opened the card and saw the enormous Lego set he had been dreaming about, he gasped. The card said, "Congratulations to our dear grandson." He immediately took a seat on the ground and began putting things together while beaming broadly. He stopped then. He pointed to something beneath the plastic on the box's side as his face turned slightly pale. "Mom, what's this?" I asked with a smile as I bent over to take a closer look. A hard square edge that didn't belong on any Lego piece was visible beneath the thick plastic. My stomach fell. There was a problem. Absolutely incorrect. I laughed it off and kept my voice light. I carried the box inside, placed it high on a shelf, and then came out again, continuing to clap, smile, and take pictures as if nothing had happened. "Let me check it later, buddy. Keep building." However, everything had already changed in my mind. What did I do next, in your opinion? Did I go far enough, or too far? Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, and share your opinions in the comments section. You won't see it coming, I promise. At last, the house became quiet as the final vehicle left the driveway. I waited until Ethan was comfortably seated in his room, playing the new game that his friends had been talking about all afternoon, controller in hand. He appeared happy, the ideal level of exhausted children get after an exhilarating and active day. Before the lights went out, I told him he could play for another 30 minutes. He nodded, already deep in whatever level he was on, his eyes fixed on the screen. I went back downstairs as soon as I heard the sound effects and music I knew beginning to play behind his closed door. I had left the Lego box on the kitchen counter, and it was right there. I steadied it by picking it up with both hands and carrying it down the hallway to my tiny home office at the back of the house. I pushed the door closed with my foot and set the box on the desk, right beneath the lamp that could be adjusted. I only had the desk lamp angled low. I didn't turn on the overhead light. Without making the entire process seem like a late-night investigation, I wanted clear visibility. I extracted a pair of tiny scissors from the top drawer after pulling it open. The flaps were still firmly sealed with the factory tape. In order to avoid tearing anything underneath, I took my time and carefully cut along the seams. I started by taking out the thick instruction manual after the top had fully folded back. Then, to prevent confusion, Each numbered bag of parts was stacked on the side table in the correct order. The edges of the compartment didn't quite match the rest of the plastic, but it was there, molded into the base tray like it belonged. It appeared with a soft click when I lightly pressed on what appeared to be a fake panel. The gadget was a small, black device about the size of a matchbox, with a small glass lens on one face and a few thin wires that connected to a flat battery underneath. Strips of black tape, which contrasted with the vibrant colors surrounding it, were used to secure it. My hand remained steady throughout. I reached into my pocket for my phone and turned it to the camera. I began by taking broad views of the open box before getting closer. Angled from above to demonstrate depth, top view, and side view, I made sure the lens captured the wire routing and the serial number etched on the edge. As I carefully raised the panel, I took more. On the other hand, I laid a fresh sheet of white printer paper on the desk and positioned the device in the middle after easing it halfway out with the tip of the scissors to avoid leaving fingerprints. Additional front, rear, and side photos set against a plain background. I focused on the tape that held everything together, the lens, and the battery label. I took the device out of the supply drawer and put it in a clear plastic zip bag once I was sure I had enough paperwork. I squeezed out the air, sealed it firmly, then sealed it a second time for good measure. I placed the bag in the locked bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, next to the folder containing our important documents. After writing the date on it with a black marker and folding it once, I tested the handle twice and turned the key. Gazing at the now empty box, I reclined in the chair. The Lego bags remained well organized and sealed. In order to make everything appear undamaged, whoever did this had opened a brand new set, added the gadget, and sealed everything again. I quickly searched for the following information on my phone: shape, size, lens, and battery configuration. It became evident in a matter of minutes that this was not an official Lego component. It never belonged in any set. It had been placed there on purpose. Out of habit, I turned the phone on and off again, cleared the search history, and placed it face down on the desk. Silently, I walked out of the office and upstairs. Ethan's door remained slightly ajar. As he prefers. I slightly widened it so I could see inside. The controller was on his chest when he fell asleep. The room was softly lit by the TV as it paused on the game menu. He breathed steadily and deeply. I intervened, took out the controller, placed it carefully on the nightstand, and covered his shoulders with the blanket. He remained motionless. I watched him for a few more seconds. He would be eager to construct that set when he woke up tomorrow. I would need to come up with a plan for that conversation. The typical strip of hallway light remained after I pulled the door nearly shut once more. I went down to the kitchen sink, filled a glass with water, and stood staring out the window. With the exception of the neighbor's porch light, the backyard was pitch black. There were 2 empty pizza boxes on the picnic table, and the folding chairs were strewn about where we had left them. I would tidy everything up tomorrow. I had choices to make tonight. Later that evening, I sank into the sofa in the living room while holding my laptop open on the coffee table in front of me and my phone in one hand. Now the whole house was silent. The game noises from upstairs have stopped. There was no distant street traffic noise. Just the occasional creak of the floorboards settling and the gentle hum of the kitchen refrigerator. I was unable to fall asleep. Not quite yet. My mind refused to shut down. The one question that kept coming up was straightforward but challenging. Why would they act in this way? Why would my own parents give their grandson a gift that included something like that? I had to know the motivation. For the first time in years, I forced myself to face the memories head-on as I allowed them to come to mind one after the other. My father, Robert, was the first person that sprang to mind. He has always evaluated people based on their financial success, particularly his children. Growing up, Sunday dinners were more about his updates on real estate values, retirement accounts, and investments than they were about the food. He would nod and say, "That's nice, but grades don't pay bills." If I brought him a good report card, he sat me down with a spreadsheet to keep track of every paycheck and expense when I started my first part-time job at the age of 16. Money is security tomorrow. Lose control of it and you lose everything. This habit persisted. Even after I moved out and started my own life, within minutes, he would call to check in and inquire about my 401 contributions or whether I was making the most of Ethan's college savings. I tightened the blanket around my shoulders. Those conversations never felt like concern, but rather like ownership. Robert couldn't bear the thought of resources existing outside his control. It wasn't advice, but oversight. They always needed control over money that wasn't theirs. They were always in charge of someone else's money. Laura, My mother came next. She was different. She had a gentle voice, gave warm hugs, and was always the one to diffuse tense situations when Robert became too harsh. However, her generosity had its limits. Following the divorce, she visited Ethan more frequently, bringing grocery bags or small gifts. My concern is that you manage everything by yourself, my love. It's a lot for one person. She would sit at my kitchen table, drinking tea, and enumerate the difficulties of being a single parent. Boys require discipline and structure. Do you think you're getting enough sleep to maintain your patience? On the surface, it sounded encouraging, but the underlying message of each comment was the same. She would compliment Ethan to his face and then whisper to me later, "He's such a good boy, but he could use more stability." She positioned herself as the safety net I seemed to need because they always thought I wasn't capable of making decisions on my own. I put the phone down for a bit and rubbed my eyes because I wasn't handling things well enough without assistance. The third memory was the most obvious and painful: the trust fund. My grandfather, Robert's father, passed away 4 years ago, and left $180,000 in a trust expressly for Ethan's future education. Laura's approach was more subdued than Robert's, but the objective was the same: undermine confidence, create dependence. They always assumed I couldn't handle things without their guidance. Robert was in the lawyer's office when it was read, and I saw his jaw tighten. "That night at their house," he began, "that's a lot of money sitting there. I was the trustee, and I had complete discretion over its use for school-related expenses. No one else had access. The entire family should profit from family resources." Laura softly added, "Ethan is the only person on our minds." Over the years, the recommendations became more straightforward. "We'll pay it back with interest." Holiday dinners evolved into conversations about short-term borrowing for auto or home repairs. Birthdays brought envelopes containing suggestions for alternative ways to invest the fund. They presented it as practicality, but it was entitlement. The money was Ethan's, safeguarded for him, but they behaved as though it was a shared account awaiting their approval. They never took anything, keeping it out of their reach. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the laptop's dark screen. The pattern was now obvious. Putting a listening device in Ethan's gift wasn't a rash decision. Rather, it was a calculated tactic reconnaissance to gather information, build a case, gather proof that I was failing so they could justify stepping in for the trust fund, for influence, or for whatever came next. Control over finances, doubt about my parenting, and resentment toward money they couldn't touch were the reasons behind it. I finally shut down the laptop and turned off the lamp, and the room went dark except for the dim glow from the streetlight outside. I sat on the sofa for a while longer, listening to the quiet house, knowing that tomorrow I would have to start protecting us for real. This realization weighed heavily on my chest. This was more than just a strange gift. They were setting the stage for something more serious. I texted Sophia Miller the night before, and she immediately responded, "Come first thing." Her building was in a quiet area of downtown Indianapolis, with secure parking and a lobby that had a subtle coffee scent from the cafe downstairs. The following morning, I got to her office before most people even started their commute. Since the receptionist hadn't arrived yet, Sophia met me at the door herself, keycard in hand, and waved me through to her private office at the end of the hall. The space was tidy but cozy, with a large window letting in early sunlight, a few framed pictures of herself with what appeared to be her own children at graduation ceremonies, and stacks of files in color-coded folders. Without asking if I wanted one, she gestured for me to take the chair across from her desk and poured me a cup of coffee from the pot on the side table. I accepted it with gratitude because I needed something to hold my hands, set my phone down on the desk between us, and opened the photo gallery to the folder I had made. This was concealed inside the Lego set my parents sent Ethan as a graduation present. Sophia picked up the phone and started scrolling, pausing on each picture, methodically zooming in on the device against the white background, the close-up of the lens, the serial number, the taped wires, the false compartment in the box tray. Her expression remained neutral, as lawyers do when processing information, but I noticed that she paused longer on the shot that demonstrated how neatly it had been installed. When she finally put the phone down carefully, she explained, "This is a combined audio recorder and GPS tracker, not some toy add-on." "That's what I thought," I said, sounding more composed than I actually felt. "Someone altered a factory-sealed set to include this. It's locked away now, untouched, since these photos." "Excellent. When the time comes, we'll send it to a forensic examiner. Chain of custody starts with you," she wrote on her pad. "Walk me through why you believe your parents are behind this." I summarized it for her. Robert's lifetime pattern of financial oversight, Laura's subtle undermining, And the constant pressure regarding Ethan's trust fund. She listened, her pen moving quickly, occasionally seeking clarification on dates or specific conversations, and when I was done, she turned back a page in her notes. I did some preliminary checks after your message last night, she said. I kept it factual, without any extra emotion. A formal guardianship petition has not yet been submitted by Robert and Laura. They have, however, contacted the family court clerk, sent a notice of intent to seek temporary guardianship, and filled out an inquiry form. Concerns about your financial security and emotional health as a single parent after the divorce are among their stated justifications. I felt the air leave my lungs. They have no justification. I have provided all of Ethan's support myself. Exactly. Sophia tapped the phone screen, saying, "This is exactly why they need surveillance to manufacture evidence against you. Which makes this device critical. An argument that was recorded on a bad day. Financial concerns expressed out loud, or anything else they can alter or remove context from to make you seem unfit. The trust fund plays a big role here," she said, turning to her computer and bringing up a document. "You are the only trustee of $180,000 from your grandfather Robert's father, which is only to be used for Ethan's education. They get a say in financial decisions if they are granted guardianship, even if it is only temporary. You've made repeated references to their earlier recommendations to take inspiration from it. Home problems, auto repairs, and family crises. I always presented it as a short-term loan with repayment promises. That's the strategy. They're in the preparation phase, gathering information, building narrative." Sophia closed the file. "They make you look careless for not using available resources while presenting themselves as the wise choice. Ethan won't be removed right away if there is no emergency filing, but we can't wait idly. Now, what should we do? We get the counterattack ready. Keep a record of all your communications with them going forward. Save voicemails, emails, and texts. Maintain a record of all visitation requests and the way the current schedule handles them. We'll gather your financial records, consistent income, bills, paid savings, contributions, Ethan's school reports, and, if necessary, teacher statements. The gadget turns into our focal point." She gave me a printed checklist and said, "Start gathering these references from friends, pediatrician notes on Ethan's well-being, illegal surveillance by grandparents trying to undermine parental rights. We reply with our own motion, emphasizing alienation and privacy violation, as soon as they formally file. Judges take physical evidence like this seriously." I tucked the list into my bag after folding it. I drank the coffee even though it was cold. I felt ground beneath my feet for the first time since learning about the device. Purpose, not panic. Sophia got up to lead me out. "They're expecting hesitation or anger from you. Give them neither. Stay methodical." "I will." I meant what I said. I watched the numbers go down in the elevator. They believed they were gaining leverage against me. Rather, they had equipped me with the most powerful weapon imaginable. A few days later, the weekend came when my parents were able to host their own second graduation celebration by taking Ethan for a few hours thanks to a temporary court order. Sophia had told me that unless we had a reason to block it entirely, it would happen. For the time being, the judge has upheld grandparents' visitation rights, limiting them to public areas during the day. No overnight stays, pick up and drop off at a neutral location. I followed the order exactly, even though I detested every aspect of it. I opened the box of the smartwatch I had ordered for expedited delivery on Friday night. It appeared to be enjoyable. Games, a bright screen, and simple texting were all included, but the hidden SOS button was the main feature. With a single long press, my phone immediately received a GPS ping and began recording audio for up to half an hour. After supper, I called Ethan into the kitchen. Curious, he leaped up on a stool. I adjusted the band after sliding the watch onto his wrist. With a light yet serious tone, I said, "This is important, okay? Tomorrow, when you go with Grandpa and Grandma, if anything feels off, if they take you somewhere different than the park we agreed on, or if you just get uncomfortable, press this button here and hold it." He looked at the screen. "What does it do?" He nodded slowly, as if in an emergency. "It sends me your exact location instantly and lets me hear what's going on. I'll come get you right away. No questions, no trouble." He tested the fit by flexing his arm and said, "Exactly. Only use it if you need me, but don't hesitate." I forced a smile and said, "It's cool. Feels like a secret agent gadget. Your own personal backup." Saturday morning arrived too quickly. The busy mall parking lot served as the meeting place. People and cameras are all around. It's difficult to claim it wasn't public. I parked close to the entrance, arrived 20 minutes early, and waited with the engine running. With his backpack resting on his lap, Ethan sat next to me and talked about what he wanted to construct first out of the Lego set that was still unopened at home. I nodded as I listened, but my gaze remained fixed on the time. Their silver SUV arrived precisely on schedule. Rachel in the back seat is leaning forward to wave. Robert is behind the wheel, and Laura is smiling through the windshield. Ethan jumped out, hugged me, and said he would text me when he could. I saw him approach, get into the back, and fasten his seatbelt. As they drove away toward the exit, they waved. The agreed-upon plan was simple: a quick lunch at a family restaurant, followed by a small cake and a large park with a playground and picnic areas. I returned home at precisely 4 o'clock and made an effort to stay productive by doing laundry, sending emails, or doing anything else that would keep my hands occupied. I looked at the watch app every half an hour. Pings in stores and eateries are normal, nothing out of the ordinary. My phone started buzzing loudly on the counter at a little after 2 o'clock. Red warning banner, SOS activated. Live location streaming as they leave the park route and head directly to their outskirts neighborhood. I didn't consider it. Before the chime ended, I grabbed Rachel's phone from her purse and got into the car. I dialed 112 while driving. The operator responded right away. I'm reporting a violation of a court-ordered visitation agreement. My son Ethan is with his grandparents under a temporary schedule that requires all activities in public. His emergency device just activated, and GPS shows they're taking him to their private home address instead. He's 11 years old. She accepted the information coolly. I read the app's names, case reference, and current location feed. Units are being dispatched. Stay on the line if possible, ma'am. I'm en route now. Tell them I'll be there soon. The streets were blurred. My hands were white on the wheel as I barely avoided being pulled over for exceeding the speed limit. Every red light seemed to last forever. 15 minutes later, I turned onto their street. There were already 2 patrol cars parked at the curb. An officer is talking to someone at the door while standing on the front porch. I ran up the walkway after slamming the car into park. With a cautious hand raised, one officer turned. Ma'am, are you the parent? Yes, Alyssa. The door opened wider. Is Ethan okay? He's inside unharmed. We're addressing the location violation. Laura appeared agitated as she stood there with her hands clasped. Robert crossed his arms behind her. Rachel hovered in the entryway further back. Then Ethan showed up with his watch still on his wrist and his backpack slung over one shoulder. His gaze met mine, and he ran directly to me through the door. I grabbed him and held him. He was shaking a little. He whispered, "They said you couldn't make it and we should just stay here." Against my shoulder. "I'm here," I declared. "Always." The officer verified the agreed-upon public locations, took quick statements, and looked over the visitation order on his tablet. Robert got going. "We only thought the backyard would be nicer for the party." The officer courteously cut him off. Laura tried in a quiet voice, "Sir, the order is clear. Public venues only for this period. We'll document the deviation." I remained silent and said, "Officer, it's family. We meant no harm." All I did was keep my arm around Ethan. The officer nodded to me after verifying the IDs and notes, saying, "You can take him home." Report filed. I secured Ethan's seatbelt and turned on the engine. I saw them on the porch in the mirror. Laura was wiping her eyes. Rachel was turning her head away. And Robert was stony-faced. After the first mile, Ethan was quiet. I pressed it when they kept saying, "You forgot to come." "You did exactly right." We stopped for ice cream on the way home, even though neither of us was hungry. Something normal. The watch had recorded everything. And now it was supported by the police report. They had permanently crossed the line. The officers immediately verified the situation and gave me the all-clear to drive Ethan home. It was comparatively quiet when we drove. Ethan processed as he gazed out the window. I didn't encourage him to speak. He unbuckled as we pulled into the driveway and silently followed me inside. After locking the door and placing his backpack near the stairs, I watched him fall onto the couch while still wearing his shoes. He shook his head and asked, "You want anything? Water? Snack?" I left him with the TV remote and went to the kitchen table, asking, "Can I just sit here? Take all the time you need." I was still holding my phone with the SOS event open in the Watch app. Unaffected since the alert, the recording icon pulsed red. I sat down, plugged in my earbuds, and hit play. As soon as he hit the button, the timestamp began. As clear as day. Robert's low, authoritative voice was heard first. "Listen carefully, Ethan." Laura's tone then became gentle and enticing as she said, "When people ask why you spend more time with us, you say your mom has a lot going on and sometimes forgets things." Rachel leaped lightly, almost playfully, and said, "It's not lying. Honey. Mommy gets stressed. And she's not always as stable as she could be. You can tell them that. Just practice it. Mom forgets to pick me up sometimes. Or mom gets upset and yells. Simple." Robert once more. Laura said, "We can give you the structure you need. Tell them you'd like that." The recording continued with more coaching, gentle repetition, and minor corrections when Ethan paused. "And, if the judge ever talks to you directly, you say you'd feel safer and happier with more time at Grandpa and Grandma's house." At first, he repeated the words they fed him in a small, uncertain voice. With my hand shaking now, I stopped halfway and said, "Mom forgets. Mom's not stable." I downloaded a local copy to my laptop, uploaded a third to a secure drive, and exported the file to my cloud storage. I then sent Sophia Miller the original via email, complete with timestamp and metadata. Subject: audio recording of the visitation infraction from today. It is urgent. Her reply came back quickly. I put the phone down and turned to face the living room. Got it. Downloading now. Do not delete or alter. We'll discuss strategy tomorrow morning. With one arm hanging over the edge of the couch, Ethan had dozed off. Evening gave way to night. Shortly after 7, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Alicia stood there, holding a grocery bag in one hand, and a pizza box in the other. I opened the door for her. She gave me a strong hug. At first, no words are required. How is Ethan? How is Ethan? Actor Flake. Asleep on the couch. He's okay. Physically. She looked over. Her face softening. I came as soon as I got your message. We carried the pizza to the kitchen and said, "Let him rest. We'll talk." After putting it down, Alicia took her laptop out of her bag. I played the recording for her at a low volume, and said, "Show me what you have so far." Robert, Laura, and Rachel's words hardened her expression. She let out a sharp breath when it was over. This is coaching. Straight up. Alienation. I know Sophia has it now. Good. But we need the full picture. Alicia opened her text and email archives. We spent hours working side by side. I've kept everything, too. Let's pull it all together. I retrieved old emails from Robert requesting access to Ethan's savings statements for tax purposes from my computer and phone. Laura texts him after every small school-related problem, implying that a longer stay with us would help him concentrate. More recent messages from Rachel included pictures of enjoyable family dinners with captions like "Wish Ethan was here more often," followed by inquiries regarding the balance of the trust fund. Alicia discovered a chain from 2 years ago in which Robert insisted that I transfer the trust to an account under his supervision and sent investment advice. Laura responded to my refusal by saying, "We're only trying to protect Ethan's future." We printed the important conversations, underlined dates and phrases that demonstrated the pattern: financial strain, parental uncertainty, and repeated attempts to influence choices. By midnight, we had physical printouts neatly stacked and digital folders arranged by type and year. Everything is time-stamped, searchable, and prepared for Sophia. Alicia shut down her computer. She spent the night in the guest room. This shows years of build-up, not a one-off. Exactly. Around 2 in the morning, Ethan woke up and padded into the kitchen to get some water. I greeted him there, rubbed his back, and offered him a glass. Bad dream? He nodded and shuffled back to the couch. Just thirsty. Go back to sleep. I'm right here. I went back to the table and gazed at the files. The smoking gun was the audio. The motivation was the past. My son had been set up to betray me. We were far from finished constructing the case, though, as every word and every attempt were now recorded. The entire hearing took place in the downtown Indianapolis family courthouse 2 months later. By now, the building was recognizable. Echoing hallways, security check, the silent anxiety of individuals awaiting the call of their cases. I was dressed simply but professionally, and arrived early. With a thick binder in hand, Sophia Miller was by my side. Ethan was in class. He was not required to be present for this, the judge had decided. We sat down at the table of the petitioner. Robert, Laura, and Rachel were seated across the aisle from their attorney, a gray-suited man who was constantly rearranging papers. They didn't look me in the eye. The judge, a strict woman with reading glasses on her nose, came in. After giving the file a quick glance, she started the proceedings. Sophia took the lead, calmly and methodically outlining our position. She began with the Lego sets gadget. Professional analysis verified that the forensic report, which was entered as Exhibit A, was a post-manufacturer edition that could track GPS and transmit audio in real time. From my sealed bag to the lab, the chain of custody was recorded. The watch recording followed. Sophia contributed significantly to the open court. The timestamps are displayed on the screen. Robert's clear directions. Laura's persuasive voice. Rachel's mild prodding. Ethan is being guided by all three, to memorize and repeat phrases that are intended to make me appear emotionally unstable and forgetful. The judge listened carefully, occasionally stopping the playback to take notes before moving on to the communication history. The projected screenshots that Sophia showed included years of emails from Robert asking for financial information, texts from Laura asking me about my parenting style after every minor disagreement, and messages from Rachel mentioning the trust fund as a resource that the family should use responsibly. Patterns included repeated attempts to access accounts, suggestions that Ethan would benefit from more time in their care, and insinuations of inadequacy. Sophia made the connection. This overprotectiveness was not unique. A child was directly coached to make prepared remarks against his primary caregiver as part of an ongoing campaign of control that culminated in unlawful surveillance. Their lawyer made the following arguments: lack of intent to harm, concern for the child's welfare, and grandparent rights. He attempted to minimize the recording as misinterpreted instructions and the device as a safety tool. But the evidence was tangible, time-stamped, recorded, and concrete. The closing remarks were brief. Sophia highlighted the intentional planning of the surveillance, the deliberate coordination, the violation of visitation terms to create opportunities, and the coaching of particular language for possible use in court. All of them sought to exert control over Ethan and his trust fund. The judge took a moment to reflect. In the corridor, we waited. Sophia went over her notes. The coffee I drank from the vending machine was not good. We were summoned back in less than an hour later. From the bench, the judge spoke clearly. The evidence presented demonstrates a pattern of behavior that goes beyond reasonable grandparent concern. The installation of an unauthorized surveillance device in a child's gift, the violation of court-ordered visitation parameters, and the recorded coaching of the minor to make negative statements about the petitioner constitute serious interference with parental rights. This is not a single decision made in haste. This is a coordinated plan with systematic steps designed to undermine the mother's custody and gain access to the child's financial resources. She rejected the guardianship petition in its entirety, stating that such actions amount to parental alienation and present a clear risk to the child's psychological health. I was given exclusive decision-making power, sole legal and physical custody, and no obligation to consult with my extended family. Robert, Laura, and Rachel were immediately subject to restraining orders that prohibited them from communicating with Ethan in any way, including by phone, text message, social media, or coming within 500 feet of his home, school, or activities. Contempt proceedings would be initiated for any infraction. As trustee, I maintained complete control over the trust fund, keeping it safe and secure for Ethan's future. The court adjourned. I felt lighter than I had in years as I stepped outside into the brilliant afternoon light. The practical consequences were immediate and long-lasting. That same day, I blocked every known phone number and email connected to them. I updated the pediatricians and the school's emergency contacts. Just in case, I switched a couple of my online accounts. We relocated to a new home, in a different neighborhood 2 weeks later. For continuity, the school boundaries remain the same, but they are sufficiently distant to allow for a smooth transition. New routines, new paint on the walls. Ethan chose the color of his own bedroom. He bounced back steadily. He occasionally asked questions during the first month. But he was able to work through the confusion with the help of therapy sessions. Will I ever see Grandma again? Will I ever see Grandma again? By the second month, he was talking about middle school tryouts, inviting friends over, and building intricate Lego creations without hesitation. As it waited for whatever college or career path he ultimately decided on, the trust fund steadily increased in its conservative investments. There will be no more unannounced door knocks. Holiday invitations with loads are over. No more subtle remarks about parenting or finances. There was complete silence from that side. And it remained that way. Sometimes people ask me if I feel bad about severing ties with my own blood relatives. The answer is simple. No, not when the alternative was to let my son's security and trust gradually erode. Because this is what I discovered as a result of all of this. Sometimes the people who can do the most harm are those who are related to you. Sometimes cutting those connections entirely is necessary to protect your child. No compromises, no glimmer of hope for improvement. And the legal system and strong evidence are your best weapons in that battle. Collect everything. Continue to document. Trust the process. Recognize that you are not alone if you find yourself in a similar circumstance. Remain steadfast. You don't deserve this place, my mother-in-law said. I packed my bags and moved out. My rent payments of $4,850 a month. Her life was destroyed by me. My mother-in-law was unaware that I was paying $4,850 in rent each month. In order for her eldest son and his spouse to begin a family, she instructed me to go. I abruptly packed everything I owned and contacted movers the following day. She was scared. As if she owned my kitchen, my mother-in-law stood there. She casually added, "You should move out," as if she were recommending that I try a different coffee brand. Andrew and Lauren need this place. They're trying to start a family. They need the space more than you and Emily do. I was frozen. Halfway to my lips is the mug. She didn't look uncomfortable, didn't inquire, and didn't explain. She simply made up her mind. Emily, my wife, was using her phone while seated at the kitchen table. When her mother talked, she looked up for a brief moment before returning to Instagram. Not even a flinch, no objection, no defense. Margaret's statements were not as painful as that. Daniel Harper is my name. My age is 34. I work for a mid-sized tech company as a financial analyst. Additionally, Emily Harper and I had been wed for 4 years. Our home was in Westchester County, New York, and had 4 bedrooms. Good schools, a pleasant neighborhood, the kind of place that young families will stop at nothing to afford. Since the beginning of our marriage, my mother-in-law, Margaret Collins, has been a consistent presence. She was opinionated on everything: where we should go on vacation, how we spend our weekends, our furniture, and our meal plans. I had learned early on to simply nod and be silent. The son-in-law, who is easy. The one who remained silent when Margaret made passive-aggressive remarks about my career not being as remarkable as her other children's. Who smiled at family dinners and offered to help with the dishes without being asked. I had been practically invisible for 4 years. And up until now, I'd been okay with that in terms of functionality. When did you start thinking? Silently, I asked. Margaret gestured with her hand. Oh, not right away. In 6 to 8 weeks, perhaps. You have time to find a smaller, more suitable place for the two of you because Andrew's lease expires in September. Cheaper is a more accurate translation. I cautiously put down my mug. Regards, Emily. She continued to ignore me. All right, I replied. Margaret grinned. I knew you would comprehend. Daniel, you're always so sensible. After 15 minutes, she departed. I thought I was already texting Andrew the good news. At last, Emily raised her head from her phone. Actually, you're not angry, are you? What would make me angry? I'm not sure. You appear tense. I chuckled. It was unavoidable. I was just advised to leave my own home by your mother. This isn't your home. Emily uttered it out of habit, then stopped herself. It's ours, after all. But Mom is right. Lauren and Andrew require the space. We are not yet parents. But I said it again. Do you understand? Yes, I understood what she meant. She meant that I had been too understanding to recognize that her family came first and always had. While Emily slept sweetly next to me that night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I reflected about the rent payments I had been writing for the past 4 years. $4,850 from my account each month, consistently on schedule. Emily paid about $700 a month for utilities and groceries. As a part-time social media manager, her pay fluctuated, occasionally being fantastic and other times not. Margaret believed that the Collinses owned this house in some way and that I was living here because of their kindness. It seems that neither she nor Emily knew. All of the invoices had been handled by me so discreetly and effectively that the work had become invisible. Background noise is something that simply occurred without anyone noticing. I turned over and examined Emily's dozing visage. How could I have been dismissed so easily? That night, I had the best sleep I had in months. Because I was finally allowed to let go of everything when Margaret urged me to go. I called Precision Movers at 9:12 a.m. the following day to make a reservation. Not to get a price. I need a full-service move. I need a full-service move, I said to the scheduler. Susan Miller, who, based on her email signature, had worked for the company for 14 years. A home with 4 bedrooms. My goal is to leave by this Sunday. This Sunday? Her voice was startled. That will be in 6 days. I am aware. Are you able to do it? We're capable of it. The cost of the haste will be higher. That's all right. Additionally, the deposit must be paid today, $2,100. Without hesitation, I provided her with my card number. After hanging up, I pulled up my files and sat at my home office desk, which I had erected while Emily was at her mother's place using a desk I had purchased at IKEA 2 years prior. Every significant expense in this home, including rent payments, furniture receipts, appliance purchases, and more, was monitored and organized like the financial expert I was thanks to years' worth of spreadsheets. My credit card was used to pay $450 for the living room couch in October 2021. I used my credit card to pay $550 for the Samsung 65-inch TV in December 2021. My credit card was used to pay $780 for the KitchenAid dishwasher. My credit card was used to pay $420 for the Whirlpool washer and dryer set. My credit card was used to pay Math BBS2, $950 for the dining table and chairs. My credit card was used to pay $650 for the guest bedroom furnishings. Almost everything in this house was purchased by me. Margaret referred to it as family property. I claimed it as my own. I methodically began packing on Wednesday afternoon. Clothes come first, followed by personal papers, literature, then electronics. It turned out to be less than they would have anticipated, but I didn't touch anything that wasn't definitely mine. Emily returned home from a coffee date with her sister at approximately $330 p.m. Dan, you home? Office? I asked as she dropped her purse on the table I had purchased for the doorway. She observed the boxes when she emerged in the doorway. Her smile wavered. What is this? What are you packing for? I'm leaving. Like your mom requested. Her face displayed a variety of emotions. Disbelief and confusion. Then what could have been panic? You weren't serious, in my opinion. Why wouldn't I take this seriously? Because she made a hazy gesture. As we don't have to accomplish this right immediately, and it takes a lot of work. Mom just said aloud what she was thinking. In order for Andrew to move in, she instructed me to vacate. Where will you go when I move out? Yesterday, I signed a lease. In White Plains, nearer to my workplace. 1 bedroom. That was untrue. Emily's expression made the little lie worth it, even if I had signed it that morning. Without speaking to me, you have already signed a lease? I gave her a look. Glanced closely. Before your mother told me to go, did you speak to me? For that, she had no response. Margaret arrived unexpectedly, at 10:30 a.m., on Wednesday. I heard her key in the lock as I was in the living room wrapping bubble wrap over picture frames. Ever since we moved in, she had a key. I had never doubted it. With her shopping bags in hand, she paused at the doorway and gazed at the partially vacant living room. The TV was already wrapped, the coffee table was emptied, and 4 boxes were piled up by the door. What's going on, Daniel? I'm leaving. She lost her grip on the shopping bags. What? I was told to move out by you. I'm leaving. Her expression became tense. This week wasn't what I meant. What time did you mean? I'm not sure. September. After Andrew's lease expires. I should move out. You remarked. I chose a timeline because you didn't specify one. Her voice rose as she turned to face the kitchen. What's going on, Emily? After hiding in the bedroom since her mother's car arrived, Emily came out. I'm not sure, Mom. He simply began packing. Stop him. I can't force him to do anything. Margaret's countenance changed as she turned back to face me. There was a small crack in the entitled confidence. She stated this was irrational. You're acting like a child. I used a Sharpie to write books, taped a box shut, and kept quiet. I'm speaking to you, Daniel. You were heard. Then answer. I stood up and turned to face her. I was told to move out by you. I'm leaving. That's what I'd say. She had a working jaw. We must have an adult conversation about this. I'm willing to talk. What are you interested in talking about? For starters, your mindset. I have a cooperative mindset. You requested that I go. I'm going. Do you understand what I mean? Do I? Like fog, the question hovered in the air. Margaret's cheeks turned red. The family must continue to own this home. I added softly, it's not in the family, it's rented. Andrew requires it. Andrew can then rent it. He is unable to pay. It was too late when she stopped and caught herself. What can't you afford? I inquired. The rent is $4, $850 per month. Her face lost all of its color. Emily's head jerked upwards. What? I continued to look at Margaret. You were unaware of the rent amount? Somehow, I thought it was split, or protected by? She paused once more. Who is covering? She remained silent. You believed the family trust would take care of it. I provided. Or perhaps you believed Emily's father was still making the payment prior to his death. Daniel. Emily snapped. What are you discussing? I looked at my wife. For the past 4 years, I have been making monthly rent payments. I took $850 out of my account. Emily's expression froze. That isn't feasible. Examine the bank statements. I never heard from you. You didn't inquire. The ensuing hush was oppressive. Margaret took a heavy seat on the couch. My couch cost $450. Her hands trembled a little. If you go, who will pay for it? Quietly, she asked. We both knew, so I didn't respond. No one. The movers showed up on Thursday with packing materials and boxes. Kevin and Ethan are two efficient and professional men in their early 30s. They asked which things belonged to me as they methodically went through the house, loading boxes, wrapping furniture, etc. All of them. I informed them. Margaret reappeared at noon, saying, all of it. All morning, she had been phoning. I hadn't responded. She froze when she entered the living room. The plastic-wrapped couch was prepared for loading. The truck already has a TV. The dining table broke down. You can't have it all, she remarked. What I paid for is mine to keep. This is ridiculous. I gave a folder to her, credit card statements, purchase confirmations, and receipts. This house I purchased is highlighted in every way. She unfolded the folder and turned the pages. Her face turned white instead of pink. The couch, the appliances, and the dining table are all mine. Like she was seeing the place for the first time, she surveyed the quickly emptying house. What should we sit on? She muttered. It nearly made me giggle. I have no problem with that. Emily emerged from the bedroom. She had been in tears. She had swollen red eyes. He's taking the dryer and washer. Mom. Margaret jerked her head up. You are unable to. I can. I said. We need the receipts, but I have them. You must. I interrupted her. You told me to go 3 days ago. You didn't inquire about my payment. You didn't inquire about my possessions. I should leave. You just decided. I'm taking what's mine and I'm heading out. On a dolly, Kevin wheeled out the washer. As if she were witnessing a funeral march, Margaret watched things unfold. Please, Daniel. Her voice broke. We can resolve this. No. I answered softly. We are unable to. Why not? You never showed me enough respect to inquire. By 6:45 p.m. The house was gutted on Thursday. No TV, dining table, couch, or appliances other than those that were included with the house. There was even no nice cookware left. After Emily's old pans continued to burn everything, I bought everything. The furnishings I had left behind, including Emily's dresser, nightstand, and childhood desk that Margaret had demanded we save, were all around her as she sat on the bedroom floor. When I went to pick up my final package, she remarked, "I didn't know. I promised that I was unaware that you were covering every expense." "How could you be unaware?" "I simply believed that we were splitting it." I pondered. She halted and began to cry once more. "I apologize. Sorry is insufficient. What should I say, in your opinion?" "Nothing. Nothing can be said." I grabbed my package and headed out. I stopped. "Daniel. Are we divorcing?" I considered it. Very thoughtful. I honestly answered, "I don't know yet, but I'm done being invisible." I blew up my phone on Friday morning. Margaret, Lauren, Emily's sister, and Andrew himself all sent texts. "We must speak. This is crazy. The family is being destroyed by you. Mom is inconsolable." Margaret was blocked by me. I muted the group chat, but then I got a call from an unknown number. I nearly didn't respond. "Speaking is Daniel Harper. This is the landlord, Robert Walsh. I have to talk to you about your lease." My stomach fell. "How about it?" "I received a call this morning from your mother-in-law. Stated that her son Andrew will be taking over the lease, and that you are leaving. Leases don't operate that way." "I know." He sounded worn out. "She's insistent. Though. And I need an explanation. The lease only has your name on it. I require 28 days notice before I return the unit to move-in condition if you decide to leave." Yesterday, I gave notice. At 9:12 a.m. An email was sent. "I understand." Mrs. Collins appears to be thinking, though. Mrs. Collins has no time to reflect. "I cut you off. It's me, not her or my wife, who owns the lease." "Me. I get it. To be clear, you are ending the lease with effect from yesterday, which is 28 days from now." "Indeed. And it won't be assumed by anyone else." "That's right." A pause occurred. "Mrs. Collins will be displeased." "I have no problem with that. In fact," he laughed. "All right. The move-out checklist will be sent to you." After hanging up, I opened my banking app, transferred $850 for last month's rent, and included a final payment message. I then gave my attorney a call. Thomas O'Neill, a 48-year-old family law practitioner, was his name. On Wednesday evening, I spoke with him to learn more about my alternatives. "It's Daniel Harper, Thomas. How was the transfer, Daniel?" "I'm done, but I need some guidance. My wife and her relatives are going crazy. They are phoning, messaging, and visiting my new residence. Can a restraining order be obtained? Against your spouse? In opposition to my mother-in-law?" He was silent for a while. "You would have to provide evidence of threats or harassment. Do you possess any documentation?" Since yesterday, 61 texts have been sent. 9 calls. At 6:20 a.m. this morning, she arrived at my apartment. That could be acceptable. Please forward everything to me. First, I'll draft a cease and desist. We escalate if she doesn't respond. How much time will it take? The cease and desist letter can be sent today. Mail that is certified. Tomorrow, she will receive it. Take action. Margaret got the letter on Saturday morning. She called me from a number I hadn't banned yet, so I knew. Lauren's mobile. I received a legal letter from you. She had a high-pitched voice. From an attorney. You would keep getting in touch with me. Your mother-in-law is me. I followed your instructions to leave my house, and now you're harassing me for doing so. Daniel, this is cruel. No, I answered softly. I was fired by Cruel for 4 years. Cruel thought I was merely furniture that could be moved around as needed. These are merely repercussions. She broke down in tears. Real tears. The house is about to be lost. I have no problem with that. Where should we go? Like I had to. Figure it out. I ended the call. Blocked Lauren's phone number as well. Robert Walsh sent me an email on Tuesday morning. Subject, 53 Oakmont Drive, early termination. Daniel, your mother-in-law and her son Andrew visited my office this morning. They'd like to take over the lease. I clarified that would necessitate a fresh application, income verification, credit check, and security deposit, in addition to the first month. 595 is Andrew's credit score. He makes $39,500 annually. He is not eligible. Despite being retired and on a fixed income, Mrs. Collins offered to co-sign. Doesn't qualify either. They have till September 15th to leave, as I have informed them. In case they get in touch with you again, I wanted you to know. We appreciate you being an excellent renter. Robert, after reading the email 3 times, I sent it along with a message to Thomas O'Neill. For your information, the family disintegrated quickly. On Tuesday night, Lauren, Emily's sister, called me from a new number. I was curious, so I responded. Please, Daniel. Mom is experiencing panic attacks. I can't afford to take her in with Andrew and me. You must assist. Why would I lend a hand? Since you are related. When it suited me, I was family. When I was silent and paid for everything. I'm disposable now that I'm inconvenient. It's unfair. Lauren. Life isn't fair. You'll quickly figure that out. She ended the call. Emily arrived at my office on Wednesday. The first call was from building security. Emily Harper is here to visit you, Mr. Harper. Do I have to send her up? No. Inform her that I'm not available. It's urgent, she says. It's not. I observed her go out of the building via the window of my office. Somehow dejected, she appeared smaller. It buzzed on my phone. A message. I filed for separation, Emily. The paperwork will be sent to you shortly. I felt that you ought to be aware. I spent a lot of time looking at that message. I then said, okay. I had another meeting with Thomas O'Neill that evening. Michelle Alvarez, CPA, an accountant. This time, 21 years of forensic accounting experience. Michelle spread documents out on the conference table and stated, here's what we've got. 4 years of rent payments, $18,900 total, all from your account, 0 from Emily's. She opened a second document. Appliances and furniture, $21,200, $7,600 for home office supplies. $3,800 for kitchenware and necessities. $32,600 is the total amount of recorded purchases. I invested a total of $209,000 on the residence, including groceries, utilities, and upkeep. But let's limit ourselves to the costs that can be verified. Indeed, $209,000. Thomas bent forward. This is important in a divorce. Rent reimbursement is available to you. Because it was rented, it is not marital property. Although the furniture is already gone and belongs to you, depending on how the settlement proceeds, we might be able to get some money back. I told her that I didn't want her money. I want her to realize how much she's lost. Thomas cautiously stated that seeking revenge is not a legal tactic. It's clarity, not retaliation. Michelle shut her file. For what it is worth, I've witnessed a lot of financial manipulation during divorces, including people lying about their income and concealing assets, but I've never witnessed someone pay for everything in silence while being regarded as though they made no contributions. That is. She hesitated. It's a unique form of invisible. I said, I'm no longer invisible. Margaret called from a different number 4 weeks after I moved out. I responded either out of curiosity or because I was feeling giving. Her voice was unusual. Daniel. Silent, vanquished. I must apologize. All right, I was unaware. I promise that I was unaware that you were covering every expense. You did, indeed. I didn't. Margaret, you were aware. In your mind, I was supposed to pay, therefore, you simply didn't care. I was meant to be appreciative of the honor of being a member of your family. You didn't think you needed to ask. So you didn't. Quiet. At last. She replied. The landlord is evicting us. Andrew cannot afford a good place to live. Lauren refuses to assist. Emily and I are returning to my retirement condo. Daniel, I'm 66 years old. I'm meant to be on the road. Instead, my daughter's spouse departed, so we share a 2-bedroom. I stayed put. I made the correction. You instructed me to. I am aware. Do you? Are you certain? Her voice broke. Indeed. Excellent. For 4 years, I went above and beyond to be what you wanted and fit in with your family. And you attempted to get rid of me like furniture as soon as I became useless. As if I were unimportant. Did you matter? No. I answered softly. I was handy. There is a distinction. Before she could answer, I hung up. The divorce papers were finalized 10 weeks after I moved out. Emily made no objections. Didn't request alimony. Didn't quarrel over property. She recently signed. I received the news over the phone from Thomas. It's official. You're no longer together. Tidy split. No continuous commitments. That was quick. She didn't want to prolong the situation. To be honest, I believe she feels bad. She ought to. Daniel. He hesitated. This is something I've been doing for a while. I've witnessed violent custody disputes, bitter divorces, and financial warfare. This is as polite as it gets. She had numerous opportunities to argue with you. She realized she was probably mistaken, so she didn't. But at least give her credit for that. I considered it. About her mother's voice breaking over the phone, about Emily sobbing on the bedroom floor. Perhaps. I mentioned that I received a Facebook message from Andrew 4 months after I moved out. I felt that you ought to be aware. Mom suffered a heart attack. She's all right. However, the physicians stated it was connected to the stress of everything. If you would like to visit, she is in the White Plains Hospital. For 2 hours, I gazed at the message. I then took a car to the medical facility, cardiology wing, 5th floor, White Plains Hospital. Margaret's room was located. 4:17 p.m. Monitors beeped softly while she slept. She appeared smaller and older. Emily was seated in the chair next to the bed. When I walked in, she looked up, her eyes widened. Daniel. I received a message from Andrew. You arrived. I arrived. For a few minutes, we sat in silence. Margaret breathed steadily. Rhythmically, the monitors beeped. At last, Emily apologized for everything. For failing to recognize the extent of your actions. For failing to stand up for you. For allowing your mother to treat you as if you were unimportant. I am aware. Do you? I gave her a look. I understand your apologies, but they won't make up for 4 years of being invisible. I am also aware of that. Margaret woke up. She opened her eyes. Took some time to concentrate. She froze when she saw me. Daniel. Hello. Margaret. You're here. But why? Because I'm not cruel in spite of everything. She started crying. I lost everything. No, I answered softly. What you took for granted was gone. That's not the same. I ought to have. She paused and then resumed. I ought to have inquired about everything, including the rent and what you were paying. Yes, I replied. You ought to have. Will you pardon me? I considered it. Very thoughtful. Sincerely, I said, I don't know yet. I can tell you this, though. I'm tired of being the silent son-in-law. I'm done being handy. It's on my terms if you want me in your life, even in a supporting role. With gratitude, with respect, or not at all? She gave a slow nod. I get it. I got up and gave Emily a look. Look after her. Daniel. Emily got up as well. I appreciate you coming. You were not required to. No. I concurred. I didn't. Before the tears could come, I went. I'm sitting in my White Plains 1-bedroom apartment 7 months later. It's all mine, quieter, and smaller than the house. Sometimes my phone buzzes. Emily occasionally texts, giving brief updates about her mother and engaging in light conversation. I reply courteously but aloofly. Last month, Margaret gave me a modest, handwritten card. We appreciate your visit. I'm grateful for all of your efforts that I never recognized. I apologize for seeing you at such a late hour. This is what I ultimately comprehended, therefore I saved the card. You cannot make others respect you. They can't see your contributions. Only what you are willing to accept is up to you. I chose to accept my invisibility for 4 years because it was simpler than trying to be seen. However, Margaret unintentionally allowed me to quit accepting less than I deserved on the day she urged me to go. She believed she was creating room for her son. In reality, she was creating room for me to remember that I was valuable beyond obedient silence. It wasn't the loss of furniture that caused the fear I noticed in her eyes when the movers left that house. She had lost control. Which she shouldn't have had in the first place. Kicked out at 19 for refusing to share my inheritance with my entitled brother. Years later, they begged me after he cheated and their business collapsed. I was kicked out of the house by my parents because I could not bring myself to share my inheritance with my brother who was entitled to it. Finally, after a number of years have passed, they are approaching me to ask for assistance because he cheated on his wealthy fiancée, and as a result, their business is failing. The reason my parents kicked me out of the house when I was 19 years old was because they discovered that my grandfather had left me a trust fund. They wanted me to split that trust fund with my brother, who was a golden kid, but I refused to do so. This happened 7 years ago. My grandfather had passed away just a few years before that, and he had left the trust fund to me as a surprise, which I discovered on my birthday. I was surprised to learn about the trust fund. I was overjoyed as a result. However, it did not last for very long, since my parents reached out to me just a couple of weeks after my birthday and told me that I needed to share the money from the trust fund with my brother. They said that by doing so, they would be able to cover the expense of sending him to college without any difficulty. When I was 19 years old, I made the decision to forego attending college and instead take a gap year in order to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Consequently, it is not as if I did not require the funds from the trust fund for my own personal use. When I started college the following year, I would require it in the future, and I did require it at the time. I had no choice but to decline the offer because I was in desperate need of the money for both my present and my future. I believe that my brother has reached his limit. In no way did my parents come from an impoverished background. In the event that they desired to do so, they would have the financial means to send my brother to college. It was their own company that they ran. They were able to run it for a considerable amount of time, and it performed adequately enough for them to not require any additional assistance from anyone else. Consequently, I am perplexed as to why they felt the need to ask me and why they were so insulted when I denied their request. Nevertheless, they were quite furious when I refused, and after that, we got into a really ugly argument, and ever since then, we haven't spoken to each other. In spite of the fact that he is 3 years younger than I am, my brother has not communicated with me. This is not surprising given that my parents utilize him as a puppet for their own enjoyment. In any case, he used to be around back when we were on good terms with each other. One of the reasons I did not want to split my trust fund with him was because I do not even like the guy, and my parents have always preferred him. We never got along very well, and that was one of the reasons why I did not want to work with him. He was always treated better, and he received the most of the attention for himself. On top of that, I have always had the impression that he is more pampered and deserves more care than I do. During our most recent discussion, which was also the argument that we had, I made the accusation that my parents had a preference for him over me. They attempted to convince me that this was not the case by using a technique known as gaslighting. I am not, however, a fool. For a very long time, that had been the case. After all, I was aware of the truth, and I was not going to let myself be fooled by the lies. They accused me of a number of different things as well. They made the accusation that I was self-centered and without concern for my family. To put it simply, they are attempting to make me feel guilty for looking out for myself. On the other hand, I was aware that if I did not, no one else would. On account of the fact that my parents were entirely different from those of my brother, I do not have the same kind of parents that my brother did. As a result, I was aware that the actions I was taking would ultimately be beneficial to me, and they have been. Since that time, I have never once felt regret for delaying the release of the money. I have completed my schooling at a college level, earned a degree in business, and have been employed by a company that has achieved a moderate level of success for some time now. There is no communication between myself and my parents at all. Although we do see each other at family gatherings and other events, we do not communicate with one another. In addition, the fact that we do not have a mutually beneficial partnership is common knowledge. In addition, nobody brings them up in conversation with me. My cousins have been spreading stories that my family has not been doing well financially as of late, and I have been hearing these rumors. Evidently, since the epidemic, the company has not been able to fully take off the way it was expected to, and it has been rather challenging for them to do so. To add insult to injury, my brother doesn't really contribute anything to the cause either. This past year, he received his degree from college, and ever since then, he has not made any effort whatsoever to get employment. Despite the fact that, according to what I've heard, he has been engaged to his high school sweetheart for 2 months, he has been sitting and doing nothing but hanging out with his friends, going out to parties, and drinking. He has been doing nothing but sitting at home. To put it another way, it is what I have been hearing from other participants. In addition, my mother provided me with confirmation of it a few days ago. In other words, it would appear that my brother has made a single decision that has caused a great deal of trouble for them. And a couple of days ago, my mother picked up the phone and phoned me to let me know about it. It was a new number that she contacted me from, because I had banned all of the other ones. When I picked up the phone, she immediately began crying and apologizing, telling me that she was truly sorry for everything that had occurred in the past, and that she simply wanted to put everything aside and ask me for some assistance. She added that she was very sorry for everything that had happened in the past. Her explanation of the matter was quite clear. To put it simply, she and my father have been attempting to persuade the father of my brother's girlfriend to give them assistance in the business. So, let me tell you something. Ever since he was in his final year of high school, my brother has been in a relationship with this particular female. They were able to make it through the long-distance relationship despite the fact that she attended college in another state. Despite this, they have remained together throughout their time in college. And approximately 3 months ago, he made the proposal. And they went on to become engaged. Nevertheless, her father was not pleased with the fact that he was unable to find work. Moreover, he discussed it with my mother and father. In addition, my parents made the decision to exert influence over him and convince him to agree to make an investment in their company so that they could restore it to a healthy condition. And after that, they assured him that they were going to talk to their son, and that the fact that the company was making a comeback would serve as an incentive for their son to join them and begin working for them. And in this way, everyone would be content, regardless of whether or not her father approved of it. I don't know why, but the girlfriend of my brother is completely head over heels in love with him. She would never allow him to leave her side. That is, even if her father had a negative opinion of him. The arrangement was made in this manner. The future father-in-law of my brother was going to make an investment in the company and restore it back to a respectable position. After that, my brother was going to begin working alongside my parents, and eventually, he was going to inherit the firm. By doing things in this manner, he would be able to secure a secure career in the future, and my parents would also be able to make their business successful. Additionally, he and his fiancée would be content because there would be no issues with her father. This would make them happy. There was a situation in which everyone came out ahead. No matter how much a woman loves another guy, I don't think anyone in their right mind is going to stay with a guy who has been cheating on her for God knows how long. However, my brother had to go out of his way to make everything a mess for everyone because just a couple of days ago, his fiancée ended up breaking off the engagement. As a result, my brother had to go out of his way to make everything wrong for everyone. And it is a significant setback for him, because this young lady was willing to battle for her father, despite the fact that he was pretty much up to no good and was just another unemployed loser. She fought for him. I have to mention that because she fought for him. On the other hand, that was not sufficient for him to maintain his loyalty to her. It would appear that she made the decision to look through his phone a few days ago since she had been having misgivings for a couple of days prior to that, effectively ever since they became engaged. This is how she discovered that he had a number of dating applications installed on his mobile device. During that time, he was having conversations with a number of other ladies at the same time, and he was also in contact with a number of the girls that he had dated from his college days. In other words, this was not a more recent occurrence. Since he had departed for college, he had been unfaithful to her until he returned. Without a doubt, that marked the conclusion of the relationship. Due to the fact that my parents had rushed the gun, she decided to break off the engagement, and even the investment has been cancelled as well. This presents a significant challenge for them. Because they were banking on the investment coming through, they went out of their way to spend a lot of money, and put it into the business as soon as they had a verbal arrangement with the girl's father. They did this because they were expecting the investment to come through. Since it is not going to take place, they have wasted a significant amount of money for no apparent purpose. In addition, they are attempting to get my brother to go back to his fiancée and apologize to her in order to get her to return, but he has refused to do so for the time being. And now they are in need of my assistance because they just have to keep going in some way. In order to accomplish it, they require financial resources. In other words, they are relying on me. In addition, this is the reason why my mother ever called me in the first place. She was at a loss for what else to undertake. At the same time, I informed her that there is nothing I can do to help her because they have made a significant mistake. Furthermore, I have nothing to do with them. This is the most crucial point. For a very long time, I have not been involved with them in any sort of way. In light of this, there is no use in calling me. She made an attempt to communicate with me, but I ended the call and immediately blocked her. And ever since that time, a great number of members of the family have come out to me in an effort to convey to me that they are sincere in their desire to work things out with me and that they are in desperate need of my assistance. However, I do not feel obligated to communicate to them or even in any way assist them because during my entire life, they have never made me a priority in their lives. In addition, I do not have to fulfill the same obligation for them at this moment. As a result, I did not offer to assist my family with their financial matters. Bring it up to date. It has been a few days since I last posted on this site, and I would want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to everyone who took the time to leave a comment. Many thanks to you. My decision was actually justified by the fact that I have remained steadfast in it and I have not communicated with them. The fact that they kicked me out was a very painful experience. In spite of the fact that I pretended that it was not a significant issue, the reality was quite different. I was unable to get over it for a number of years since it was so terrible. It did become quite fierce and ugly during the time when we were fighting for the very last time all those years ago. On the other hand, I never in my wildest dreams expected that they would very literally order me to leave their home if I did not intend to contribute to the trust fund sharing. That has remained ingrained in my mind. Never in my life will I forget about that. Therefore, regardless of how much problems they are now experiencing, that is something that they are going to be responsible for dealing with on their own. Because they never showed any concern for me when I was going through a difficult time emotionally. Not once, not even once, did they make an effort to get in touch with me throughout the course of the past 7 years to inquire about how I was doing and to inquire about what I was doing. They have never given me any consideration at all. Because of this, the only thing that mattered to them was my brother. And I can see that very clearly. And with regard to the remainder of my family, I am completely perplexed as to why they anticipate that I will assist my elder parents. We do not have a healthy relationship, as is common knowledge among everyone. Nobody is in the dark about what went wrong. In light of this, I do not believe that I owe anyone an explanation. If there are other individuals who are willing to assist them, then they should probably become involved in it themselves rather than expecting me to do anything at this time. Since I blocked them, no one has attempted to get in touch with me up to this point. Nevertheless, this has not prevented other members of the family from reaching out to me on multiple occasions, telling me that my family is in need of me and that I ought to put everything behind me in order to begin a new chapter with them. What I don't know is whether or not my parents or my brother have probably put them up to this, which is something that I really don't understand because it's not like I'm going to give in to the pressure and back them. Due to the fact that they are incorporating other individuals in this matter, it is going to only serve to further strengthen my opposition to them. And I find that to be really dissatisfying. I am aware of the fact that they are attempting to exert pressure on me to assist them in their situation. In addition, it appears to be really unjust because people ought to be aware of my perspective on the matter as well. Everyone ought to be aware of my point of view. They ought to be aware of the specific reasons why I've decided not to assist them. Also, I have decided what I will do. In the event that things spiral out of control, be certain that I will not hold back any of my declarations. I will certainly go public with this and make sure that people are aware that I am not going to accept it if things reach to the point where I am unable to handle them and if an excessive number of people begin to try to guilt trip me. At this point in time, it has not yet arrived at that stage. Despite the fact that I am still putting up with things, I am hoping that members of the family would come to the realization that I have my own perspective on the matter, and I do not wish to get involved in this mess. I have simply been turning a blind eye to everyone because I do not wish to be impolite and I do not like to get into a battle with anyone. The only thing I can do is hope that they get the message and stop being a nuisance to me. It is fortunate for me that nobody from the family that I genuinely like has bothered to get involved in this situation up to this point. I believe that they are aware of the fact that I do not wish to be a part of this trouble. People that are really close to my parents make up the majority of this group. As a matter of course, it was anticipated that they would inflict harm on themselves rather than being directed at me. And it's not like folks simply have a hazy sense about what happened to me and my family, they have clear knowledge of what happened. As I had stated at the outset of the conversation, people are aware of the specifics of what had occurred since my parents had gone around talking about it, attempting to portray themselves as the victims. That being said, it is not as if this circumstance is occurring for the very first time. At the time of our initial conflict, 7 years ago, the exact same event had occurred both times. They had informed everyone about whatever had occurred, and they had designated me as the person responsible for it. Furthermore, even back then, I had been informed by others that I needed to make things right with my family. At this very moment, the identical thing is taking place. So it's almost as if I'm experiencing déjà vu. However, the point is that I am not going to back down from this position. When I was under pressure the last time, I did not give in to it, and I am not going to give in to it this time either. This is the second update. Having said that, it has been 4 days since the last time I updated you, and my mother arrived to meet me last evening. The only person who has been attempting to get in touch with me up to this point has been my mother, and I believe there is a reason for his actions. Despite the fact that I did not have a healthy relationship with my family, I did have a soft spot for my mother back when we were on talking terms. I am not quite certain of this, but I do know that I had a sweet spot for her. In addition, I am able to declare that in comparison to my father and my brother, the only relationship I had that was satisfactory was with my mother, despite the fact that she was just as biased as my father was toward my brother. While it was a problem, it was not nearly as problematic as the connection I had with my father. On the other hand, I believe that she is the only person who has been getting in touch with me because of this particular reason. In any case, I opened the door for her when she arrived. But I told her that if she came here to seek for my assistance, and to demand that I get back in touch with everyone from the family, then there was no sense, and she may as well go back now since I was not going to do it either. I told her that there was no point in her coming here. I was not going to give in to the desires of any other person, especially considering that none of them had ever shown any concern for me up until this point. I then requested her to proceed, and she responded with a number of things, all of which I will later discuss. In the beginning, she expressed her deepest regret to me for the fact that she and my father had always put my brother ahead of me. She said that she was truly sorry for this. After hearing her recognize it for the very first time, it was a pleasant experience. Mostly due to the fact that I had been told during the entire process that I was just making things up, that there was nothing of the such, and that they loved both of us equally and treated us similarly. However, all of a sudden, the truth was revealed. Since the beginning, they had shown favoritism toward my brother. It was very reassuring to hear her say it out loud because they had always treated him better than I had been treated compared to everyone else. Additionally, she informed me that my father wanted me to know that he had not come because he was too embarrassed to show himself, which is the reason why he had not done so. In addition, he was the one who held the belief that this was their karma for the fact that they had treated me so poorly over the course of all these years, and had never even bothered to check on me in the intervening 7 years. He wanted me to know that he was also very sorry, and that he would like nothing more than to get back in touch with me and mend our connection. He recognized that he had really messed things up, but he wanted to make things right again. He wanted me to know that he was truly sorry. In addition, they reaffirmed that they did not require any kind of financial assistance from me, which was a second time that they stated this. They did not anticipate that I would do it either, and the only reason they wanted to make up with me was because they felt awful about everything that had occurred up to this point. She also informed me that my brother had moved out to reside with a couple of friends after a significant argument with the family, which explained a lot of things to me. She explained that my brother had stopped communicating with the family because of the argument. As a result, I spoke with her as to whether or if they were merely attempting to get in touch with me because they were aware that things had gone down quite terribly with my brother, and because they were not on speaking terms with each other, they required the presence of at least one son to be there for them. As a result, I was their alternate child. It was pretty offensive, and she attempted to reassure me that this was not the case, yet, I was certain that this was precisely what was taking place. In addition, I conveyed to her that I did not appreciate the fact that my father had dispatched her to apologize on behalf of both of them because it presented a very strange and impersonal feeling to me. One thing that he was too embarrassed to exhibit himself or whatever else it was the other item. Nevertheless, even in that case, he ought to have made an effort. It would have been more appropriate for him to come to my aid if he had truly apologized and if he had meant what he said. The only time they were able to show me that they were sorry and genuinely be there for me was during this particular instance. And even at this moment, they were making things difficult for themselves. My response to her was that I did not believe that he was overly embarrassed. It seemed to me that he was too proud to extend an apology in person. In addition, I was not going to accept an apology that was only half-hearted like this one. I expressed to her how truly appreciative I was that she had made an effort to communicate with me and had at least shown up. After that, however, I was unsure as to whether or not I wanted to get back to them at this very moment. As a result of the many things that had occurred over the course of the previous 7 years, I explained to her that I had acquired the ability to function without them. I don't even know if this is all genuine or not, and I don't want to get back in touch with them, start trying to fix our relationship, and then find out that they were only trying to use me as a placeholder for the son that they actually preferred. I don't want to come to that conclusion. For the simple reason that, let's face it, they only got in touch with me because they were having a disagreement with my brother. In addition, I was not going to be dealt with in such a manner. Even until this very moment, when they were attempting to make amends with me and express their regret, they continued to treat me as if I were a citizen of a lower social class. My perception was that it was not fair. In addition, if I'm being completely honest, I've gotten very acclimated to living my life without them by this point. Over the course of these 7 years, I have experienced a significant amount of personal development. I already have my own life. I am surrounded by them. There are things going on in my own life. It does not seem necessary for me to accept their apologies, and I have no problem with the fact that I will not be able to repair my relationship with them. At this time, I informed my mother that I did not want anything to do with them, and that I was not interested in coming over for dinner or anything else. I also declined to come over for anything else. My mother started crying, and she began accusing me of not caring about them at all, despite the fact that I was extremely polite about it and I tried my best to be pleasant about it. It was very difficult for her to come to me and apologize in person, but she did it nonetheless. The least I could do was at least explore the thought of attempting to make things right with them. She explained that she had found it very difficult to come to me and try to apologize in person. But even if I were to commit to that, I couldn't. Not to my liking was that. Consequently, I informed her that I had already made up my mind and that I did not wish to fritter away any more of our time together. It was not in my best interest to get into a confrontation with her, and I did not want to witness her crying. She told me that she was very unhappy in my behavior and that she was even more disappointed that this was how little I thought of them. I comforted her for a while. But then I told her that she had to leave, and finally, she did leave. However, before she left, she told me that she was surprised by how little I thought of them. If I'm being completely honest, it was their own fault, but I didn't say anything about it. They had shown me the kind of people that they were capable of being. It is therefore impossible for them to blame me for believing them and having a low opinion of them. They have to come to terms with the fact that what is occurring right now is all their own fault. Exactly, that is it. Because I am not the bad guy in this situation, I will not allow myself to be made to feel like one any longer. This is the third update. A couple of weeks have passed since I last had a conversation with my mother. And following that, the members of my family who had been reaching out to me and attempting to convince me to talk to my parents physically stepped up their attempts to encourage me to do so. And it was at that moment that I became even more convinced of the fact that my parents had been the ones who had put them in this position. Their whole intention was to take advantage of the family in order to coerce me into having another conversation with them. At some point in the future, I am very certain that their intention was to make a minor improvement in their relationship with me, and then they would initiate the request for the money. Unfortunately, that is not going to work for them since I am not going to cave in to any pressure that they put on me. It doesn't matter to me, as I've stated in the past. My main concern is for myself, because I am aware that they are not doing anything to protect themselves. In addition, I have reached my limit over the course of the past few weeks. I've reached the point where I've had enough of my family trying to influence me, as well as the rest of my relatives trying to coerce me into doing something that I'm not really eager to do. Therefore, whenever any of my relatives have texted me in the past few days trying to tell me that what I'm doing is not right and that I should take this opportunity and make the most of it and all that stuff, I have responded to them and told them that I have made up my mind and that I don't want to drag this out any longer than it already has been. As a result, I would be really grateful if they refrained from becoming involved in this matter because I do not wish to engage into a heated argument with the rest of the family on this matter. In regard to it, the majority of people have shown understanding. They had no additional attempts made. On the other hand, there are a few of them who are quite stubborn and who are close to my parents. They have argued with me and picked fights with me, but I have not given it any consideration. I have eliminated them from my contact list since I do not require this kind of nonsense in my life. If I'm being completely honest, the individuals that I'm removing from my life at the moment aren't even people that I care about that much. Due to the fact that they are members of the family's older generation and since they are close to my family, I do not wish to have any interaction with them. They are all on my side, including the younger ones, who are my cousins. Furthermore, they have even provided me with some fascinating information about the situation. To give you an example, my mother has been lying about the fact that they are no longer communicating with my brother because he is still living with them and he hasn't even moved out or anything like that. I don't see why they would lie to me because it's quite possible that I would have discovered the truth at some point in the future. Taking into consideration the circumstances, it is evident that I would have learned the truth if I had consented to come over for supper. Furthermore, it would appear that I do not have an issue with my brother more than I do with them. This is the most apparent of the two. They really needed to come to terms with the truth that it was they who were the more significant issue, and not my brother. It goes without saying that I did not have a strong affection for my brother. Nonetheless, this was a consequence of the manner in which my parents dealt with me. It did not fall squarely on his shoulders. I don't comprehend why it is such a challenging piece of information to acquire. The fact that they lied to me was the most critical thing, because it completely destroyed any credibility that they had until that point. The realization that I had done the correct thing by not forgiving them and not getting back in touch with them was brought to my attention by the fact that they were going to utilize me for their own benefit in the long run. I am also very certain that they did not mean their apology or whatever else they were trying to say. As a result, I am quite relieved that I did not forgive them. Although I am unsure whether or not my mother actually meant anything that she said. I am quite certain that my father did not intend for him to show up. Which is probably the reason why he did not even bother to show up. To tell you the truth, I believe that this is beneficial for all of us. They are not someone I want in my life, and I am certain that they do not want me either. It was merely my assistance that they required, but that is not what they are receiving. The fact that we are all familiar with each other's genuine appearances is, therefore, beneficial. Moreover, I am fairly certain that after this, they will not make any attempt to get in touch with me again, regardless of the circumstances. You slammed the door in your sister's face, my mom said. I replied, I didn't agree to free childcare. I said, if you show up, I'll call CPS. Your apartment is located that much closer to the airport. At 10:45 p.m., my sister sent me a text message. My 5 children will be there for a period of 3 weeks. My hubby took me by surprise by giving me Bora Bora. I responded with a letter. It is not my home. The response came from her. Your mother has your spare key. She is allowing us to enter. After giving a friendly grin, I immediately called security to have the locks changed. She had 5 pieces of luggage with her when she arrived at my building, and the doorman had new instructions for her. I am David, by the way. I am 36 years old, and I make my living by flying passengers all around the world. I am the family's success story, at least according to the paper. Being the first person to graduate from college, having a solid job with a major airline, and having a decent apartment in a city that my parents still consider to be too costly are all accomplishments that I have achieved. Over the course of my life, I spend half of it in the clouds and the other half attempting to get some rest. A single interpretation can be drawn from that in my family. It is you who is in possession of it. Certainly, you put in a lot of effort. We are not proud of you at all. Exactly, David. You are able to pay it. My age is the oldest. Emily, my sister, is 33 years old. For example, she has 5 children who are younger than 12 years old, a husband who is interested in cryptography, and the ability to make any problem sound like it is my job. When it comes to being a selfless mother, my mother, Susan, is the kind of lady who lives for Facebook posts about being a mother. The majority of the time, my father is hiding behind his phone or his newspaper, and he allows her to speak for both of them. Because of how hectic my schedule is, I don't get to visit them very often. My mind is like a mess of scrambled eggs because of things like rotating shifts, red ice, and different time zones. On the other hand, if I happen to be in town on a Sunday, I make it a point to go out to the suburbs for dinner at least once a month. That evening, the evening in which everything began to significantly deteriorate. A grueling 5-day expedition has now come to an end. Travel from New York to London, then to Rome, then back to JFK, and finally to Miami through Miami. There are delays, turbulence, and a drunk person screaming in row 20. Over the course of 2 days, I slept for approximately 5 hours. On the other hand, my mother sent me a text message that read, "Family dinner. Everyone is coming. Don't disappoint your nieces." I went. When I entered the house, I was immediately confronted with the typical maelstrom of noise. The cartoon station is playing loudly. Children jogging on hardwood floors while wearing socks. The sound of my mother ranting about potatoes from the kitchen. She immediately cried out, "David!" without turning around. "You're running behind schedule. I just landed," I said as I unloaded my overnight bag and placed it by the entrance. My arrival was a direct result of my arrival at the airport. In one hand, Emily was shoving macaroni into the child, and in the other, she was browsing through TikTok. Emily was sitting at the table with her phone. With a sneer on her face, she looked up at me. She commented, "Must be nice," as she was traveling around the world while the rest of us were focused on our everyday lives. As I did so, I inhaled deeply. My exhaustion prevented me from engaging in a debate. As she turned around, Mom used a dish towel to wipe her hands. She stated, "We were just talking about the van." And I concurred. "Emily's dying. The mechanic said it's dangerous to drive with the kids. We figured you could help." There it was at the scene. "No. How are you? No. Have you had a good flight? Let's go right to the question." With a dramatic eye roll, Emily rolled her eyes. We did figure it out since it seems that Tom and I are meant to be able to conjure up $8,000 out of thin air. You do not have a partner. Not a single child. That pilot money is in your possession. I turned my head to look at my father. As he calmly watched the game on the television in the corner, he maintained his focus on the game. I just finished paying off my own automobile. I added. What about my school loans? Still trying to get caught up. Mom smiled at me with the tight smile that she possesses just before she says something that will remain ingrained in your mind for long periods of time. I beg you, David, please. In a single month, you earn more money than your father ever did when he was your age. Families are able to assist one another. Do you really want your nieces to get caught in a deadly trap as they are riding around? That statement sat like a brick in my chest when I read it. Since family helps family, this means that you help us. Upon taking a seat at the table, I was immediately experiencing that old, familiar mixture of rage and guilt that was rolling about in my gut. Even though I was unaware of it at the time, that was the very first crack that occurred before everything exploded. Emily did not always have 5 children and a van that was in disrepair. She had the title of princess when we were younger with her. To begin, not in a snobbish manner, but rather to just protect. In order to save money for flying school, I was the one who was mowing lawns when I was 15 years old and bagging groceries when I was 17 years old. My parents made it abundantly plain that they would not be paying for anything that was pricey and risky. At one point, my father asked me, "You want to fly planes?" And I responded by saying, "Then you better figure out how to get off the ground on your own." Okay. I did it. I spent years bouncing between crummy apartments and crash pads with 4 other pilots in order to make it through training. I worked every spare hour, studied, and took out loans that made my head spin. All of this was done in order to make it through training. In the meantime, Emily spent her gap years switching between several majors and men. Her pregnancy at the age of 25 caused my parents to experience a week of intense anxiety. After that, they changed their strategy. Having a child is a blessing. She made the decision that we will sort it out. Through us. She came into contact with me. It began on a modest scale. Emily was in tears when she phoned me because her rent was past due, and the baby formula was pricey. Only for this one time, David. I am certain that I sent her a wire transfer of Math BBS $500 that I did not actually possess. Then there is the monthly power cost. Then there is the security deposit for a more spacious apartment. Following that, the kid will require urgent dental care. Time and again, there was a justification. She would repeat. You know they're struggling. Throughout each and every call that my mother made immediately after. You have no idea how challenging it is to deal with children. To be able to travel is a blessing for you. I am fortunate. This word has always had a sour taste to it. At the time that Emily gave birth to her 4th child, I had lost count of the number of times that I had intervened. Because she was so upset about the late fees, I paid off one of their credit cards after she had a phone call about it. The minivan that they ultimately damaged was financed with my co-signer's signature. In order to provide the children with memories that would last a lifetime, I utilized my work benefits to book them inexpensive flights to Disney World. In spite of the fact that I couldn't recall the last time I had gone on a vacation of my own, I was excited. In every instance in which I attempted to establish a boundary, it turned into a family vote on my personality. On one occasion, I declined Santa's offer to buy me an iPad for Christmas. Emily creased her face in pain. Are you truly going to force me to tell my children that Santa Claus was unable to finance it? It was my mother who leaped in. Please, David, stop acting so dramatic. Simply said, it's money. Taking it with you is not an option. The father cleared his throat as if he were going to speak, and then he returned his attention to his ham. My feelings began to shift from those of a son to those of a walking automated teller machine with a pilot's license. The issue about flying is that it appears to be a glamorous activity from the outside. When people think of layovers, they think of traveling and drinking drinks. When you're actually doing it, you're dragging your wheeled bag through airports at 5 o'clock in the morning, eating depressing sandwiches by yourself in hotel rooms, and waking up not knowing which nation you're in. On my days off, I was completely worn out. Instead, I required a peaceful night's sleep. The buzzing on my phone continues unabated. Hello. Uncle David. Would you be able to watch the children on Saturday so that Tom and I may go out on a date? Do you have any hotel points that you are not currently using? This resort is located here. Does this car seat have the capability of covering the difference? The ones that are safe are really pricey. If I did not respond in a timely manner, The group chat would become active. The family unit. It's Mom. David. This is Emily. Wow. It is rather polite of you to overlook your relatives. The only time we ever begged for anything, Mom, was when we were in dire need of it. I was wrong about that. They inquired on a regular basis, but they never witnessed it. When I was in Chicago for a stopover, I recall sitting in a hotel room and glancing at my banking app every minute. Just now, I had transferred $math BBS1, $0 to cover the costs of school uniforms and fees. When compared to someone who worked as much as I did, my savings account appeared to be quite small. Math was done by me. I'd given them enough money over the course of the previous 4 years to buy that van twice. The amount is sufficient to make a down payment on a modest dwelling. A sufficient amount to have taken myself on a trip that consisted of more than just sleeping in a different bed between every flight. On the other hand, I had Emily's text message from the previous week. In all honesty, you ought to feel grateful. We infuse your life with significance. In the absence of us, you would be nothing more than a solitary individual sitting in the cockpit. There was no response from me to that one. Eventually, the hatred grew to the point where it was comparable to a flight that was continually delayed by 20 minutes. Because you are certain that this delay will be the final one, you choose to remain at the gate. It was a Tuesday evening when the final straw was thrown. After yet another series of consecutive flights, I was at last back at my house. A strange documentary was playing in the background while I was half sleeping on top of the covers. I had just showered, eaten some inexpensive takeout on my couch, and it was already half asleep. When I was at 10:45 p.m., my phone rang. Emily was the one in question. Your apartment is located that much closer to the airport. She sent a text message stating that she will be dropping off the children for 3 weeks. Tom took me by surprise by bringing Bora Bora. My eyes were fixed on the screen as I attempted to persuade myself that I had misread it. Is it 3 weeks? There is no prior notice. I scrolled up in an attempt to find any past messages that were related to this trip. None of it. What was it that I typed? There are 3 dots. Following that, we will go tomorrow afternoon. It is without a doubt the only time that we are able to travel. You won't have any problems. Children adore you. The beat of my heart began to begin. I took a glance at myself in my 1-bedroom apartment. A small couch, a single bathroom, and no child safety measures. While I was trying to get some rest in between flights, I had a mental image of 5 young people ripping through my belongings. On top of that, I wasn't even going to be in the city for the majority of those 3 weeks. My agenda had already been planned out. A number of overnight flights and long-distance flights. She responded almost immediately, as if she had already prepared it. I typed, I can't. I'm working. I won't even be here. Her response came quickly. Mom has your spare key. She's letting us in. We'll drop them at your place on the way to the airport. Don't make this a thing. The contents of my stomach fell. The decision had already been made. That line caught my attention. Something inside of me felt numb as I heard the words, Mom has your spare key. At that very instant, I came to the realization that in their minds, my own home was not truly mine. It was an additional resource, something else that they could make use of. I drew my phone to the side. I didn't instantly start thinking about how to make it work, which is something that I hadn't done in such a long time. In its place, I experienced a peculiar and piercing quiet. After picking up the phone once more, I smiled at my reflection that was displayed on the black screen. Then, I scrolled down until I reached the number for the front desk of my building. What about the front desk? Your name is Miguel. As I was saying, hey, it's David in 14B. In spite of the fact that my heart was beating rapidly, my voice seemed to be strangely stable. For whatever reason, I have a question for you regarding the locks. A brief pause transpired. Indeed, Mr. Collins, I am. Is everything correct? Not yet. I responded. In spite of this, I swiftly indicated that I needed my locks rekeyed first thing in the morning. However, it certainly will be. That under no circumstances was anyone to be escorted inside my flat without my personal presence being present. No one, not even my mother or my sister, not even my family. After a little pause, Miguel was silent. I finally understood, he said. At 8 o'clock, we are able to perform maintenance there. I'll also write a note for all of the doormen for you. There is no access without you. As I mentioned, I am grateful. After a moment of hesitation, I continued. My mother might show up and pretend that I gave my okay. It wasn't me, he said with a quiet chuckle. This occurs rather frequently. There is no need to worry. We will carry out your directions. As soon as I hung up, the rush of adrenaline began. My hands were shaking. Once more, my phone is buzzing. It's Mom. I was informed by Emily that you are being difficult. Her phone rang before I could give her a response. I responded to it. As far as I can see, you are not willing to assist me in any way. She yelled out before I had a chance to greet her. Despite the fact that your sister has finally received something pleasant, you are going to spoil it. Nothing is going to be ruined by me. I responded by saying, I have work. I can't take 5 kids for 3 weeks. That's not babysitting. That's parenting. You're exaggerating. She responded by saying, they'll be in school most of the day. You're barely ever home anyway. What's the difference? I told her that whenever I am not on a flight, I am at home. During those days, I am only able to take a break and relax. It is not possible for me to oversee 5 children by myself. It may not be safe. With a big sigh, she exhaled. I had anticipated this happening. You've let money get the better of you. You used to have a kind smile. It made me laugh. In the end, it was cruel. When I was younger, I used to be afraid. These two things are not the same. I was able to visualize her face because she was silent for a brief moment. Lips were pressed down, and eyes were squinted. Listen to me, she called out at the end. The kids have already been informed that they will be staying with you. Neither Emily nor Tom are able to get their tickets back. This does not have a backup plan. You are going to put an end to this nonsense, and you are going to arrive at your apartment the following day, and you are going to open the door. There was a deafening stillness on the line, I said, and I was correct. What exactly did you say? Her voice was soft. No, I replied, repeating myself. You don't get to volunteer for free childcare without asking. You don't get to wave family around like a contract. I didn't agree to this. You are such an ungrateful fool. She severed her connection with herself. I was on the verge of choking after everything that we had done for you. She continued going on and on about everything you had done for me. Your fantasy was supported by us. What we saw was you chasing after the sky. Quotes from the air were audible to me. There was no request made for you to repay us. The door is slammed in your sister's face, and now that she is in need of your assistance. In the past 4 years, I have provided Emily with more than $18,000, I stated. Although my voice was shaking at this point, I continued on. The transfers are retained in my memory. The rent, the bills, the van, and the loans. To make it possible for you and your father to go on cruises, I have taken shifts off to babysit. My flight benefits have allowed me to take you on holidays that I would not have been able to afford for myself. That is not the same. She retorted angrily. That is what they do as a family. You were not required to do so. It is very evident that I did not. When I hesitated, you branded me selfish, I said. I said this every time. I saw you cry. In your statement, you mentioned that the children will be deprived of food, school, and Christmas time. Can you even hear what you're saying? Once more, she remained mute. I said, I'm going to say no for the first time in my life before you force me into a corner. However, I am not your contingency fund. The locks on my door will be changed tomorrow, and I am not your free nanny just yet. She snarled. You wouldn't dare to do that. This is your notice, I said. Consider it such. Should you arrive at my building with those children and baggage, they will not be permitted to proceed to the upper floor. I will contact Child Protective Services if you continue to leave them there. It is not because I intend to bring you harm, rather, it is because it is neglectful to leave 5 children in a lobby. Regarding the government, you are making threats against me. Over the subject of her family, her voice became frantic. As I was saying, I was protecting myself. And to tell you the truth, I'm shielding your children from your sense of entitlement, she exclaimed. David, I hope you take pleasure in your life of solitude. One day, after we are gone, you will come to regret it. When the line was cut off, I was sitting there in the darkness, with my phone still placed to my ear, and I felt a momentary tremor. The shame rushed over me to such an extent that I considered calling back and apologizing for my behavior. Make an offer to figure it out, take a leave of absence without pay, and further impoverish myself. After that, I remembered my cramped apartment, the walls that I had to pay for, the bed that I hardly ever slept in, and the years of time and money that I had wasted that I would never get back, and I allowed the guilt to be forgotten. My lock was changed by maintenance the following day at 8 o'clock sharp. It was at 10:30 o'clock when I discovered them on my way back after getting some coffee. Emily and Tom are my mother's children. In front of Miguel's desk in the lobby, there are 6 luggage that are all standing together. While she was yelling, Emily's arms were flailing around. Already, the children started complaining about something. I could see my mother making a dramatic gesture toward the ceiling. Miguel was the first to notice me. A slight widening of his eyes occurred, and then he moved his gaze in their direction. David. Emily spun around in a circle. Request that your small guard dog come and let us in. What he means is that you altered the instructions. As I stated, I did. Her lips parted with a sigh. Is this something? Mum made a demand. A performance of some kind possibly? Are you pleased with the fact that the entire building can see what a chilly person you have become? Tom remained silent, his eyes darting back and forth between us as if he were a nervous spectator. I told you that you were told no. My words reverberated throughout the marble lobby. You came to the conclusion that it was irrelevant. You attempted to use a key that I had given to my mother for use in case of an emergency. Emily cried out, "This is a critical situation. Would you be able to tell me how much these tickets cost? We have already left the house. We have checked out." The children are quite amused. You are not allowed to treat us in this manner. I could feel the gaze of everyone on us. It was the receptionist, a couple dressed in gym attire, and a delivery guy who was carrying a bundle of things in his arm. Providing free childcare for a period of 2 weeks is not an emergency, I stated. You are doing me a favor. And I did not consent to it. The mother took a step forward. Her eyes flaming. In front of everyone, you are humiliating your family. It was you who brought us here, I whispered. You've done this. After pulling out my phone, I opened the banking application on it. I was unable to control my quivering hands as I scrolled down to the transfers. Repeatedly, Emily Collins was mentioned. I angled the screen so that it was facing her. I mentioned that this is the final 4 years. Rent, bills, car, vacations, uniforms. You've treated me like a bank with no security questions. That ends today. She scoffed as she glanced at the screen and then continued her statement. So what? You want a medal? No, I clarified. The tone of my mother's laughter was high and harsh when she said, I want you to stop acting like you're entitled to my life. Listen to what he has to say. As far as Mr. Pilot is concerned, he is superior to the rest of us. No, I reiterated my previous statement. I believe that I am on par with you. That is the thing that irritates you. I gave Miguel my attention. They do not appear on my list of guests. I beg you, do not allow them to go upstairs. He nodded, maintaining a bland expression. As you would expect, Mr. Collins. Emily appeared to be oblivious to my presence as she glanced at me. You are prioritizing financial gain over the well-being of your own nieces and nephews. She murmured. I turned my attention to the children. He was picking at his shoelace with his fist. An additional individual appeared to be on the verge of crying as a result of the strain. I said, I'm choosing to keep my sanity. I have made the decision to stop being used in any way. It is not I who is their parent. You are. Mom shook her head, eyes slick with angry tears. You're dead to me, she yelled. I nodded once. Okay. They hurried out, pulling suitcases and kids behind them. I stood there in the suddenly quiet lobby, feeling like someone had just depressurized the cabin. It ached. There was no point in pretending that it didn't happen. But below the pain was something else. Relief. They traveled to Bora Bora nonetheless. I found out about it through Instagram. 3 hours after the confrontation in the lobby, Emily uploaded a photo of herself wearing big sunglasses and holding a coconut that appeared to have a small umbrella inside of it. The caption read, Finally taking time for us, number deserved, number blessed. The children were tagged with their grandparents. So much for having no backup plan. I gazed at the screen for a moment before laughing, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. That evening, my mother sent me a text message, which read, You humiliated us. Your father is furious. The kids are confused. I hope your empty apartment keeps you warm at night. I put my phone on so it does not disturb me. After that, there was an oddly quiet period of time. This means that there will be no incessant buzzing for favors, no guilt-laced messages, just checking in, and no requests for money. After going to work, flying my flights, and returning home, I found that the silence was oppressive at first. It was as if I had been missing a frequency that I had always tuned into. After that, it started to feel all right. I was able to enjoy my first full day off, during which I did nothing but exist. It was a late night for me. Instead of eating food at the airport, I prepared a real breakfast. In the absence of anyone calling my name, I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee. I decided to pay for a massage on a whim. I immediately flinched when the receptionist informed me of the price, and I immediately converted it into, "That's half a utility bill for Emily." After that, I stopped myself. Not only was it my money for my job, but it was also my body, which was continuously experiencing jet lag and pain. I responded with, "Yeah, that's fine," and then I paid. On the other hand, something in my chest seemed lighter afterward, and my shoulders felt lighter as well. The smear campaign had a modest beginning. Direct message, DM, from a cousin I hadn't talked to in years. "Hey, what exactly took place with your mother?" Something that she posted was a little ambiguous. Today, I checked Facebook. There was a lengthy piece that my mother had written about being a martyr. In her writing, she expressed that there are some of us who offer everything for our children, but in exchange, we receive nothing but harshness. Imagine you are responsible for the upbringing of a son who prioritizes financial success over his own family. Say a prayer for my heart. Numerous comments, hundreds of likes, and hugs are being sent your way. You are such a wonderful mother. Remain steadfast. God is aware of everything. She did not tag me, but it was unnecessary for her to do so. Everyone was aware of it. Once upon a time, the shame was really intense. One part of me wanted to compose a response that was so lengthy that it would mention every dollar, every sacrifice, and every manner that they had taken advantage of me. I turned off the application instead. If there is one thing that I have learned from flying, it is that you cannot exercise control over the weather. Only the reaction from you. During the subsequent few weeks, other things came to light. It was my aunt who called me in private. As far as I can tell, she stated that she was aware of what had taken place. Your mother made it appear as though you had abandoned 5 children on the pavement, but then she revealed that she and your father are in fact the ones who are responsible for their care. It was a pause. You are aware that she has been boasting for years about how David will take care of us when we are old, right? She whispered. You did the right thing. And I figured that I had the proper answer. We talked for a longer period of time than we had in years, and I wish I had done it sooner with my own children. At the end of the call, she admitted that she had been giving money to her own adult son for years, and that she had felt trapped. She said that seeing you say no made her think that maybe I am allowed to stop as well. Huh. I started therapy. I had been meaning to start for a very long time, always telling myself that I would do it when my schedule calmed down, which was a joke. During the first session, I told the therapist about the van, the money, the hallway scenario, and the trip to Bora Bora. She leaned back and asked, "You know this is parentification, right?" I found a therapist who worked online between trips. Ever since you were a teenager, they have been treating you as if you were a third parent and providing you with a financial safety net. Isn't that just the fact that you are the oldest? I shrugged. She provided me with terminology that I had not before encountered, such as boundaries, investment, and financial abuse. No, she answered. It's being exploited. I made a number of changes at home, some of which were relatively minor, but they added up to a significant impact. I canceled the automatic transfer that I had set up to Emily every month, just in case. I also closed the joint emergency credit card that my mother had for the children. I changed my will to leave my assets to a charity and a couple of friends instead of my parents in the event that I outlived them. My mother had urged me to write this will when I first started flying. Account. During a rare extended period of time off, I decided to book a trip for myself. I did not travel as a crew member, I did not wear a uniform, and I did not make any cabin announcements. I simply traveled as a passenger, to a place that was quiet by the ocean, where my needs were the only ones that mattered. I almost felt guilty as I stood in the boarding line with my own suitcase and no responsibilities. After that, I recalled Emily on that beach with her coconut, which she had captioned with the hashtag #blessed. The picture was paid for in part by the money that I had already given her over the years. I allowed myself the exact same luxury, but this time it wasn't on anyone else's back. Back at home, things were shifting with the rest of the family as well. My father called once, just once. He cleared his throat in the manner that he always did before saying something that was unsettling. He said, "You know your mother is upset." I responded, "I know." He continued, She says you disrespected her. And Emily? I waited. Then he surprised me. I also know how much you've helped them, he said quietly. I've seen your name on their bank statements an excessive number of times. Silence. I should have said something sooner, he admitted. I didn't. That's on me. I didn't know what to do with that. I'm trying, he added, sounding old all of a sudden. I don't agree with how that Bora Bora thing went. It wasn't right. It wasn't a full apology. It didn't erase anything. But it was the first time in my entire life my father had acknowledged the dynamic at all. Thanks for saying that. I managed. He didn't push me to make peace. He didn't order me to apologize. He just let the line lie there, kinder than usual. I hope you're taking care of yourself up there, he said before hanging up. I am, I responded, and for once it was true. Emily was quiet. No texts, no calls, and no happy birthday, despite the fact that I was aware that she had seen the notification on Facebook. Then, one day, approximately 6 months later, my phone buzzed with her name, Emily. Hey, I just stared at it for a long time. Then another bubble appeared. I'm not asking for money, she wrote. I exhaled, not realizing that I had been holding my breath. She followed with, I just wanted to say, we found a sitter. We budgeted. It sucked, but we did it. I waited. And I shouldn't have tried to dump the kids on you like that, she typed. Tom said if anyone tried to do that to us, we'd lose it. I sat down on the edge of my bed. I'm glad you figured it out. I wrote back. You're their parents. You'll find a way. She didn't exactly apologize. But it was the closest she'd ever come to admitting I'd been right to say no. We didn't suddenly become best friends. I didn't start wiring her money again. But the tone had shifted from you owe us to something more level. I realized then that me saying no hadn't destroyed them. I still hear my mother say, you're dead to me. And my own calm, okay, I was scared that moment would haunt me, but therapy made it clear that I didn't end my family. I ended my role as their wallet. It had forced them to finally grow up a little bit, and it had forced me to finally live my life like it belonged to me. Sometimes, on red-eye flights, I still hear my mother say that. I am still their son, but I fly my own plane and choose where my time and money land. Now things are distant, but quiet. Emily is responsible for her own bills, and the spare key is finally mine again. I am on the side of the narrator because David came home exhausted from a multi-city run, received a text at $10.45. Mathram PM. Informing him that 5 children would be dropped off at his 1-bedroom apartment for 3 weeks, and discovered that his mother had his spare key and intended to let them in. This tale reminds us that family assists can become a blank check if you don't specify limits early and in writing. 2 important implications from this story are that you should document everything, save transfer history and screenshots like David's $math BBS 18, $0 plus over 4 years, and secure your life as if it counts. Am I the asshole for setting up my best friend with a possessive man for revenge after she tried to get too close to my husband? My best friend needed to see what was out there, so he spent months attempting to woo my spouse. She now feels bad about upsetting me. Since we were roommates in nursing school, Chloe had been my best friend. She supported me through all the significant events in my life, including serving as my maid of honor at my wedding to Ethan 4 years ago. When she was dating, which wasn't frequently because she didn't have good sense in men, we did everything together, including wine nights, weekend brunches, and couple dates. When she came over, Ethan would prepare extra food because he knew she lived off takeout and always expressed his happiness that I had such a great friend. Up until around 5 months ago, when Chloe ended her relationship with her most recent disastrous boyfriend, who had been having an affair with his ex the entire time, everything was ideal. For weeks, I supported her as usual, bringing her ice cream, and allowing her to cry on my couch. To help her feel less alone, Ethan included her in our plans, and told her she deserved more. I became aware that things were becoming strange at that point. Instead of using our group chat, Chloe started texting Ethan personally. First, it was just memes. Later, she asked him what he thought of the men she connected with on dating apps. Since he found it amusing that she desired a male viewpoint, Ethan showed me everything. But when the texts arrived around 1 a.m., I began to feel uneasy. The touching followed. Chloe began hugging Ethan far longer than usual, resting her hand on his shoulder during chats, and squeezing his arm when she smiled at his jokes. Instead of sitting next to me on game night, she continued to lean into his personal space. She said that I was being overly suspicious, and that she felt at ease with him, almost like a brother, when I brought it up later. However, when you wear low-cut clothes and push-up bras, your brothers normally don't notice. The clothes thing quickly became absurd. Every time Chloe visited, she began to dress as though she was going to a club. Sunday football attire includes crop tops, little skirts, and full makeup. She would stoop directly in front of Ethan to retrieve items that she had unquestionably dropped on purpose. She purchased the identical outfit I had worn to my anniversary dinner, and began wearing the same scent. Ethan confided in me that he was starting to feel uneasy. The supper for my anniversary was the tipping moment. Chloe spent the entire evening trying to give Ethan nibbles of her dessert, while wearing a dress so short that she couldn't sit without flashing everyone. She sat on his lap during photos, claiming it was just for fun, and continued to share private jokes from their messages. She pretended that Ethan was being stiff when he shoved her away. I told her bluntly that night that she needs to quit acting in such an unacceptable manner around Ethan. She chuckled and remarked that I was being insecure, and that perhaps Ethan wouldn't like our conversations as much if I were more entertaining. In fact, she stated that Ethan most likely enjoyed having a companion who wasn't so stiff and uninteresting. Married men need female friends to remind them of what's out there, she continued. Instead of punching her, I used my imagination. Initially, I began involving my other buddy, Olivia, in every situation. Olivia was attractive, unmarried, and really considerate. I would also invite Olivia whenever Chloe emailed me about hanging out. Olivia received all the attention Chloe was accustomed to, and Chloe detested not being the only friend who was single. While Chloe sat there boiling, Ethan and I would repeatedly compliment Olivia on her work, her apartment, and her dating stories. After that, I gave Chloe some tweaks on how to use her dating apps. I advised her to arrange several dates each week, and to pair her up with any guys who appeared interested. During the dates, I would help her get ready, and get her excited before texting her to ask for updates every half an hour. I would call the restaurant to see how she was doing if she didn't answer right away. The males frequently left early because they believed she had a stalker friend. The highlight, however, was introducing Chloe to Aaron, Ethan's coworker. Aaron was successful, beautiful, and incredibly needy with women. I informed Aaron that Chloe had expressed her love of attention, and her belief that possessive males were romantic. I explained to Chloe that Aaron needed someone to actively pursue him because he was bashful. Because Aaron wouldn't let her go, their first date lasted 5 hours, and was referred to as true connection. In little than a week, Aaron was sending Chloe hundreds of texts every day and bringing flowers to her workplace. She tried to vent to me, but I told her that his obsession was so romantic. She wanted someone who put her first. Didn't she? She couldn't end their relationship without coming across as the terrible guy who allowed him to get away with it. I made sure Chloe understood how wonderful my marriage was when she was interacting with Aaron. Now available on Spotify as requested reads. See the link in the comments or description. I began sharing content about Ethan on social media all the time. We had pictures of us laughing over dinner on every date night. Every private joke was made public. All of the wonderful things Dad did for me were shared so Chloe could see them. The view counts increased within minutes, so I knew she was looking at my postings, but her comments gradually decreased until they ceased altogether. Since I had never been that kind of person before, Ethan found it strange how much I was now sharing online. However, I explained to him that all I needed was to recall the pleasant moments. When Aaron sent Chloe his 150th text message of the day, asking her what she was doing and whether she had missed him yet, I truly wanted her to know exactly what she was unable to have. It felt better for her to be silent than for her to answer. Around 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, my phone buzzed, and Chloe's name flashed on the screen. According to the text, Aaron wanted to prepare a romantic meal for her, and had unexpectedly arrived at her place with bags of groceries and pots and pans. She stated that since he had gone to so much difficulty, she didn't know how to get him to leave without coming out as unappreciative. Could I please advise her on what to say? I replied back, grinning at my phone, saying it seemed really romantic and committed, that most women would kill for a guy who put them first, and that she should truly value someone who cared enough to surprise her in this way. After all of her unsuccessful relationships, I suggested that perhaps she simply wasn't accustomed to receiving genuine attention. As if typing, she returned 3 dots. After that, they vanished, and I didn't hear from her that evening. I was checking Chloe's Instagram for the 5th time in 10 minutes when Ethan entered the living room. Before he asked what I was doing, he paused at the doorway and looked at me for a considerable amount of time. I quickly turned off my phone and stated I was just making sure my pal was alright. I felt sick to my stomach as his face remained flat and doubtful. He simply shook his head slightly and returned to the kitchen without saying anything else. But his dissatisfaction was like smoke in the air, and I could feel it. He had no idea what Chloe had attempted to do to us, I told myself. However, I couldn't shake the expression on his face for hours. Chloe attempted to end the Aaron issue after 4 weeks. She told me via text that morning that she wanted space, and that she was going to end their relationship at lunch, since it was going too quickly. I replied with a thumbs up and continued working at the hospital. My phone exploded with texts from Chloe at around 2:00 the afternoon, stating that Aaron had arrived to her workplace, rather than our scheduled meeting at the restaurant, and that he was sobbing in the lobby, declaring that she was the only positive thing in his life. She claimed that her co-workers were observing the entire event, and that she appeared to be a horrible person. The subsequent text stated that she had decided to give it another go because she couldn't simply dump him in front of everyone after he had caused such a commotion. After reading the messages again, I was filled with a sense of pleasant contentment. That Saturday, I invited everyone aside from Chloe to a game night. Olivia and her new boyfriend stopped by. As before, we set up board games and refreshments when Ethan's coworker brought his wife. Throughout the evening, I posted numerous pictures of everyone laughing and having a good time, along with notes expressing how much I cherished my incredible friends. In the kitchen, Olivia approached me aside and stated that leaving Chloe out while she was obviously having difficulties felt cruel. Chloe had been too busy with Aaron anyhow, I informed Olivia. Furthermore, when she chose to disregard my marriage, she had made her own decisions. Olivia didn't press the issue, although she did look uneasy. On Monday morning, Chloe texted me to let me know that Aaron had begun taking her to and from work so they could spend more time together. He was waiting in the parking lot every day, so she explained she could no longer justify it by saying she was exhausted or had things to run. "I feel like I can't breathe," was how she concluded her message. After waiting an hour to reply, I sent a lengthy text explaining that partnerships require compromise, and that perhaps she wasn't accustomed to someone being so attentive after all of her erratic ex-partners. Instead of dismissing a positive thing, I stated that she should make an effort to value having someone who genuinely wanted to be with her. I was left feeling angry by her. Max, Ethan's best friend, joined him for sports and beer on Thursday night. They sat in the living room while I showered, and when I turned off the water, I could hear their conversations coming through the bathroom door. I seemed different lately, more preoccupied with other people's issues than my own. So Max asked Ethan if everything was all right with me. As he acknowledged that he was concerned about my level of obsession with the Chloe problem, Ethan's voice became low and solemn. He claimed he didn't know how to bring it up without getting into a fight and that I wasn't acting like myself. I listened to my husband tell his closest buddy that he was worried about who I was turning into while I stood motionless with my towel wrapped around me. Rather than contacting me on Friday afternoon, Chloe gave me a call. She told me in a tremulous, tearful voice that Aaron had gone through her phone last night and become irritated because she had saved the numbers of male co-workers. She claimed that while she had him, he had questioned why she needed to talk to other guys and had forced her to list all of her phone contacts. She was asking me if this was typical relationship things or if she should be concerned, and I could sense the worry in her voice. A part of me remembered her sitting on Ethan's lap at my anniversary meal, while another part of me knew I should advise her to run. I advised her to be patient with Aaron until he gained her trust, as he was likely simply insecure from previous relationships. She hung up after politely thanking me. I was content. On Monday, I was caught in the break room by my coworker Michaels, who told me that she had spotted Ethan and me at that downtown Italian restaurant on Saturday night. Given that Chloe and Aaron had been seated a few tables away, she questioned whether it was strange to see them there. Ethan had clearly spotted where we were eating, and I could feel the heat rising on my face. I probably realized that I had picked that particular restaurant since I knew Aaron and Chloe would be there. I muttered something about having to return to work as Michaels continued to comment on how adorable Ethan and I looked together in contrast to how tense Chloe's table appeared. Ethan looked me differently that night, as if he was trying to understand who I truly was, but he didn't say anything about it. Chloe sent me a screenshot of a message from Aaron expressing his love for her 4 weeks after they started dating. She said that he had become extremely quiet and strange over the previous few days when she didn't immediately respond. She questioned whether she was being irrational for not feeling the same way yet, and whether there was a problem with her for not realizing so quickly. I could have informed her that his response was deceptive, and that 4 weeks was far too short. However, I responded by typing that some people simply pick things up more quickly than others, and perhaps she need to consider the reasons behind her fear of commitment. I went on to say that perhaps her feelings about love weren't that trustworthy anyhow, given all of her failed relationships. It took her hours to reply, and when she did, it was only an all right. We ate at the kitchen table as usual that Tuesday night after Ethan prepared pasta with his homemade sauce. I told him about the patient in room 304, who kept taking out his IV when he inquired about my shift at the hospital. Ethan turned off the water and stood staring at me while I was rinsing plates after we had finished clearing the dishes together. He suggested that we discuss Chloe and my actions. My stomach dropped, but I said I didn't know what he meant, while maintaining a neutral expression. Ethan's jaw clenched as he revealed that he had been observing me for weeks, seeing me write about us non-stop, check my phone every 10 minutes to see if Chloe had replied, and plot things to specifically hurt her feelings. He felt uneasy about how far I was going with everything, and mentioned that this wasn't like me. Heat rose in my chest as I set down the dish and looked him in the face. I informed him that after what Chloe had attempted to do to our marriage, she deserved everything. At my anniversary meal, she sat on his knee and advised me that married men should be aware of what was going on. Ethan's expression remained unchanged. And he stated that didn't justify me turning into someone who intentionally does harm to others. He claimed that when he wed me, he did so with a sincere and nice person, rather than one who took advantage of circumstances to hurt people. I could tell he saw a stranger standing in our kitchen by the way he stared at me, and it made me feel cold. For 4 days following that, neither Chloe nor I texted each other. I sent her a humorous meme about horrible hospital patients on Wednesday, and she was furious. I requested her opinion Thursday morning after sending her a picture of a dress I was considering purchasing. She had seen it, as evidenced by the red receipt. But there was no reply. By Thursday night, I was going through our message history on my phone every 15 minutes to see if I had missed anything. It wasn't meant to operate like this. Instead of ignoring me entirely, she was meant to be unhappy, and attempting to reach out to me. When her name finally chimed on my phone on Friday afternoon, I reached for it so quickly that I nearly dropped it. She indicated in her message that she will meet up with me later, perhaps next week, because Aaron needed a lot of her attention at the moment. I was losing control of the entire scenario, so as I glanced at those words, I felt panic rather than victory. I didn't call before I traveled to Chloe's apartment on Saturday morning. She opened the door after I knocked 3 times, and when she did, I hardly recognized her. Her hair was tied back in an untidy bun, and she had black circles under her eyes and had lost weight. Despite appearing shocked to see me, she moved aside to allow me to enter. With his arms slung across the back cushions of her couch, Aaron appeared to be the owner of the space. He gave me a quick glance but didn't say hello or smile. Instead, he returned his focus to the TV. I sat down in an attempt to get Chloe's attention when she pointed to the other chair. She started to respond when I inquired how she was doing, but Aaron interrupted, stating they were doing fantastic and spent a lot of time together. I saw that Chloe had her body tilted toward Aaron, as if she was observing his reactions, and her smile seemed forced. Aaron cut me off again when I tried to inquire about her job, saying that she had been really busy lately. She hadn't been replying to people because of this. It was obvious from the way he spoke about others that he meant me in particular. Every time Chloe began speaking, Aaron would finish her sentence, add something, or correct her. I became aware that the monster I had created was far worse than I had anticipated after seeing this cycle repeat 5 times in 15 minutes. Asking if I needed any water, Chloe got up. I wanted to test whether she would go to the kitchen by herself, so I answered okay, even though I wasn't thirsty. Aaron instantly stood up to follow her when she did. Aaron's tone was tight and controlled, and I could hear their voices in the other room. He wanted to know who I was and why I had come. When Chloe described me as her best friend from nursing school, her voice sounded apprehensive. Aaron claimed that he now considered himself to be her best friend. There was possession, not affection, in the way he said it, and it sent shivers down my spine. Aaron persisted in asking why she needed other friends when she had Aaron, despite Chloe's attempts to dismiss it with a joke, claiming that people might have more than one friend. Aaron fell silent in a way that seemed risky when I heard her mention that female friendships are different. When they returned to the living room, Chloe shook her hands and gave me the water. I watched for 20 more minutes as Aaron touched her knee, shoulder, and arm, causing her to wince a little each time but smiling as he did so. Aaron didn't get up or say goodbye when I told him I had to leave. They simply stared at the TV as if I had already vanished. For 25 minutes, I sat in my car in Chloe's parking lot, holding onto the steering wheel. My heart was racing. And rather than feeling smugly content that my retaliation had succeeded, I was actually afraid for her safety. Aaron's actions had gone from being bothersome to being domineering. And I would tell him that Chloe preferred possessive guys, which would start the whole affair. I had given him the ammunition and painted a target on her back. He had trailed her into the kitchen. The way he had listened to every word she uttered. He had spoken about being her best friend, as if he were taking the place of everyone else in her life. This was no longer only clinging. This was risky. I felt sick to my stomach as I started my car and headed home because I had wanted Chloe to suffer. However, not in this manner. Not with a person who could harm her. When I arrived home around midnight, Ethan was reading in bed. Standing in the doorway, I gazed at the screen of my phone, which displayed Chloe's most recent message. "What's wrong?" Ethan inquired, setting down his book. Before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. I informed him that, by claiming that Chloe preferred possessive men, I had tricked Aaron into chasing her. I informed him that by claiming Aaron was shy, I had urged Chloe to approach him. I informed him that I had planned the entire incident as retaliation. I was now concerned that Aaron might be harmful. There were 4 different expressions on Ethan's face. His eyes widened in disbelief. Then his mouth pulled down at the corners in sadness. Then he clenched his jaw in wrath. After a long silence, he stood up and moved past me into the corridor. I heard the lock click into position, and the door to the guest room close. I hadn't slept at all when morning light streamed in through the bedroom window. Ethan was in the kitchen preparing coffee as I entered, and he didn't give me a look. I made a cup for myself and bided my time. At last, he added. I had to make up for what I had done before someone was harmed. After finding out how far I had gone with this retaliation, he said he wasn't sure he could still look at me the same way, since Ethan's viewpoint was the one that truly mattered to me. His remarks went deeper than anything Chloe had said. He claimed that regardless of what they had done, the woman he married would not have purposefully put someone in risk. He inquired as to when I had become into someone who did harm rather than stop it. Ethan shook his head when I tried to explain that all I wanted was for Chloe to feel uneasy, and to know what it was like to deal with unwanted attention. He claimed that when someone is stuck with a domineering person, intentions are irrelevant. He didn't give me a farewell kiss before heading off to work. I blocked my number on my cell phone, and called the HR department at Aaron's place of employment. In response, a woman identified herself as Emma Davis, and inquired about how she could be of assistance. I explained troubling patterns of conduct, without mentioning Chloe by name. I mentioned that an employee had been acting obsessively toward a person they were seeing, showing up to work frequently, sending hundreds of texts every day, and following them into other rooms. I told Emma Aaron's entire name and department when she asked for the employee's name. She asked if I wanted to leave my contact details and stated they would investigate. I hung up after saying no. Since they were dating outside of work, and HR had no control over their personal lives, I understood that just separating them wouldn't suffice. Tuesday afternoon, a picture from Chloe buzzed across my phone. There was a huge bouquet of flowers on her work desk in the picture, and costly vase filled with orchids, lilies, and roses. I can't imagine life without you was written in Aaron's handwriting on the card, which was visible in the picture. Chloe had written beneath the picture that she was afraid to break up with him at this point. I stared at those words, feeling the full weight of what I'd done. This was no longer an inconvenience, but genuine fear. I'd wanted revenge and had gotten it. But the price was seeing my best friend since nursing school become stuck with someone I'd purposefully targeted. We met in the location by the hospital where we used to go after our shifts, and Chloe looked even more exhausted than she had on Saturday, her hands trembling a little as she took up her cup. I phoned her on Thursday morning, asking if we might meet for coffee without telling Aaron. When I asked her directly how things were going with Aaron, she looked into her coffee and confessed that she had been trying to break up with him for weeks. But he always talked her out of it or made her feel bad. She said that whenever she brought up ending the relationship, he would cry and tell her that she was the only positive thing in his life. She also mentioned that he had started talking about moving in together and getting to know each other's families, and she didn't know how to stop it. I wanted to tell her the truth about my role, but the words stuck in my throat because saying them aloud would mean admitting what I'd become. I sat there frozen, unable to form the words that would tell her how I'd intentionally destroyed her life. She looked at me with desperate eyes and asked how she'd gotten here. How she'd ended up trapped with someone after only a few weeks of dating. When Ethan got home from work that night, I was still at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. He asked what was wrong. So I showed him the text from Chloe about being afraid of Aaron. His expression hardened in a way I had never seen before. And he sat down across from me. "We needed to fix this right now," he said. As I sat there feeling like the worst person alive, we came across websites about safety planning and organizations that helped people leave unhealthy situations. Not tomorrow or next week, but tonight. He took out his laptop and began looking for resources about leaving controlling relationships. Ethan made a list of the steps Chloe would need to take, and asked me to call her immediately. Ethan made coffee while I tried to think of a way to start this conversation. Chloe sat on our couch, picking at her fingernails, and said Aaron had been texting her every 10 minutes to ask where she was. I dialed her number with trembling hands, and asked if she could come over without telling Aaron where she was going. She arrived 25 minutes later, looking over her shoulder as she walked up our driveway. After Ethan brought the coffee and sat down in the chair across from us rather than next to me as he usually did, I took a deep breath and told Chloe that I had to confess something horrible. I spoke quickly about how I had purposefully set her up with Aaron, how I had told him she liked possessive guys, and how I had encouraged her to pursue him when he was actually dangerous. She asked why I would do that to her after everything we'd been through together, and I confessed that I wanted retribution for what she'd done to Ethan. The touching, the texting, and the sitting on his lap. Her face went through so many different expressions that I couldn't count them all. Confusion, understanding, and then, this look of complete betrayal that made me want to vanish. At least now she knew we could hurt one another, she added, leaning back against the couch cushions and laughing with a bitter sound that wasn't really a laugh. Her voice had a hint of relief, as if she had been waiting for me to show that I was just as wicked as she was. Chloe looked at the laptop screen, and began to cry, real tears that caused her mascara to run down her cheeks. Ethan cleared his throat and said we could deal with blame later, but for now we needed to get Chloe away from Aaron safely. He then showed her the resources we'd found, and explained that breaking up with someone like Aaron required a plan. Ethan recommended that we get in touch with a therapist who helped people leave controlling relationships. He had located a person named Sophie Miller, who had good reviews, and was an expert in this particular situation. Chloe agreed to call her the following morning, and Ethan offered to accompany her to the first appointment if she so desired. She said she didn't know how to leave because Aaron always knew where she was and what she was doing. As I watched my husband become the person I should have been, I felt like an observer in my own living room. The following day, Chloe met with Sophie, and returned to our home to tell us what had happened. Sophie had taken her seriously from the beginning, and had begun creating a safety plan. She would see Chloe twice a week, and assist her in getting ready for the breakup. Chloe looked scared but determined in a way I hadn't seen since nursing school, when we'd studied for our licensing exams together. The plan called for having people present when it happened, blocking all of Aaron's contact information right away, and documenting everything in case she needed a restraining order. Ethan and I decided to be at a nearby table for safety during the breakup, and Chloe picked a busy restaurant downtown where there would be plenty of witnesses. Sophie helped Chloe practice her words, and get ready for Aaron's likely reactions over the next 3 weeks. The night arrived sooner than I had hoped. Aaron arrived first, and I watched him check his phone repeatedly while he waited. 15 minutes later, Chloe walked in, and I could see her hands shaking from across the restaurant. They ordered drinks, and Chloe began talking. We arrived early and sat at a table where we could see Chloe's booth. But we weren't obvious. Although I was unable to hear the words, I could see Aaron's face change from bewildered to agitated to furious, as his voice became louder, and people at nearby tables began to glance over. As Chloe got up to leave, Aaron grabbed her wrist, but before I could move, Ethan got up from his chair, and told Aaron to let go of her arm. Aaron did so, but his loud sobs caused everyone to stare. He was talking about how Chloe was everything to him, and that he couldn't live without her. When the manager of the restaurant came over to check on him, Chloe told him that she was leaving and that Aaron needed to avoid her. Aaron attempted to follow her out, but the manager blocked his way, and called for other employees. So they had to physically escort him out through the kitchen entrance while he yelled Chloe's name. The following morning, Aaron began texting from various numbers, which Chloe blocked as they came in, but they persisted. He sent emails, attempted to reach her on social media, and even made fictitious accounts to get past her blocks. When we brought Chloe back to our house, she was sitting on the couch, trembling and crying. 4 days later, Aaron turned up at Chloe's work with flowers and a letter. Her employer had to threaten to call the police before he left. Sophie assisted Chloe in filing for a restraining order, and we accompanied her to the courtroom. Sophie advised her to retain everything and record any attempt at contact. After weeks of paperwork and waiting for court dates, Aaron challenged the order, and Chloe had to appear before a judge with all the texts, emails, and recorded visits to explain why she was afraid of him. The judge granted the temporary order and scheduled a hearing for the permanent one. Ethan and I sat behind Chloe in the courtroom as she testified about Aaron's actions. Aaron had broken the order twice prior to the hearing, once by showing up at her apartment building and once by sending a letter through a friend. Each infraction was added to the case file. On the day of the final hearing, Chloe was so anxious that she puked in the courthouse restroom. There were 2 months before Chloe and I met for coffee at the place near the hospital where we used to go after our shifts, and Aaron's lawyer tried to make it sound like she'd let him on and then changed her mind. But the judge interrupted him and said the evidence was clear, approving the permanent restraining order. Chloe left the courthouse crying again, but this time she was relieved. The conversation felt stiff and awkward, as if we were strangers trying to be polite. We sat across from each other, and both of us seemed to be careful with our words. She asked how things were with Ethan, and I replied that we were working on it. I asked how her therapy was going, and she replied that Sophie was helping her understand why she had been vulnerable to Aaron in the first place. We sat in silence for a while until Chloe finally admitted that she didn't know if we could be friends the way we used to be. I agreed and said maybe we could be something different eventually, but we both needed time. She nodded, and before she left, she apologized for what she'd done with Ethan, and acknowledged that I had been upset. Ethan and I began couples therapy the following week, and when our therapist asked us both why we were there, I had to confess what I'd done to Chloe. I told her that I was sorry for putting her in danger with Aaron, and that I would never forgive myself for it. We shared a brief embrace, and it felt like saying goodbye to someone I used to know. I'd always thought of me as someone who helped people because I was a nurse, and that's what nurses do. Ethan told the therapist that he was having trouble seeing me as both the person he loved and someone who could purposefully cause harm. The therapist helped us work through what my revenge had revealed about my character. Ethan said that learning that I could be cruel and manipulative had shaken his perception of me. We went to therapy every week, and gradually Ethan began to trust me again, though it wasn't the same easy trust we'd had before. I tried to explain that I'd felt betrayed, and wanted Chloe to hurt the way she'd hurt me. The therapist asked if getting revenge had made me feel better, and I admitted it hadn't. In fact, I felt worse than before. 8 months later, Chloe and I were different people than we had been a year ago. She was more cautious about who she trusted, and I was more conscious of what I could do when I felt threatened. We met for coffee every few weeks and discussed safe topics, and we occasionally texted about superficial things like work and the weather. Through therapy, Ethan and I were mending our marriage. But occasionally I noticed him staring at me with questions in his eyes that weren't there before. He would ask me things like whether I was manipulating him, or if I had truly meant what I had said. And each time it felt like a tiny cut, because I knew I had earned his suspicion. Chloe had been trapped with someone dangerous, scared, and sorry for what she'd done, and I'd gotten my revenge for trying to take what was mine. However, the victory didn't feel like a win. Rather, it felt like I'd shown that I was exactly the kind of person I'd been upset with, for being someone who would harm their friend in order to get what they wanted. Chloe and I would likely never be close friends again, and that was a loss I'd have to bear. I got my revenge and demonstrated that she couldn't take my husband. Someone who valued being right over being good. I'd protected my marriage but harmed it in the process, because Ethan now knew what I was capable of when I felt betrayed. However, the price was losing my identity when I looked in the mirror.